In it 10, Spider-Man. In this what-if story, Peter forgets his lunch at home, so Aunt May rushes to the science demonstration to give it to him, because, you know, that's gonna help with the bullying. Except, this causes her to be the one who gets bit by the radioactive spider, and Aunt May becomes Spider-Man. But don't worry, dear, Spider is more of a costume to me than my identity. In truth, I'm just your friendly neighborhood aunt. Using a costume to hide her real identity may set out to earn money for the family doing stunts. However, when the villain Leapfrog made an appearance, the Spider-Man defeated him and became a crime fighter. And I probably find this too funny considering how this wasn't like actually invented at the time. However, a leapfrog is like one of those like Game Boy Light things for kids that, you know, they have like educational games on them or whatnot, or like games where you have to like jump over the logs to get across the river. So I just imagine Aunt May fighting with technology instead of a supervillain, and I love it. It's so good. Not to mention that when the threat of the inheritors was stopped by transferring their consciousness into infant human babies, the children were adopted by May and brought back to her Earth. I love it.
Coming in at number 9, we've got the malfunctioning spider clone known as Kane. The original very first Peter Parker clone created by the Jackal, Kane was considered a failed experiment due to his cells degenerating into a deformed state. This degeneration also had a side effect of actually enhancing Kane's spider abilities, however, making him initially stronger and faster than the other Spider-Men, and with his spider sense essentially capable of getting brief flashes of future events. Despite his complicated beginnings as a villain of the Clone Saga, particularly taking an interest in fighting Ben Reilly, Kane would go on to find some sort of redemption by taking up the anti-hero mantle of the Scarlet Spider in the city of Houston, finally finding a place where he could carve out his own identity as a hero. From a falling apart, bearded version of Peter Parker to a spider that can stand on its own, that's one hell of a character arc for a clone named Kane.
And it ain't Miguel O'Hara. Miguel was born after his mother had an affair with her husband's boss, Tyler Stone, the vice president of Alchemax. Yeah, that's not gonna create any issues. After being forced to start human trials on research that wasn't complete, Miguel went to Stone to quit from his position at Alchemax. However, Stone ended up giving him a dose of a highly addictive substance known as Rapture. Alchemax was the only place that made Rapture, so he figured that since he was now addicted, Miguel would have to stay. But Miguel had programmed his own DNA into the machine it used in the human trial as kind of like a control, so he was able to put himself in the machine and tried to reset his DNA back to what it was before he was addicted to Rapture, because Rapture combines with your DNA. But this instead combined his DNA with that of a spider, which granted him the same powers as Spider-Man, but on a non-radioactive level, along with a couple upgrades like telepathy and talons that grow from his fingertips. It was actually so bad it caused some dude to fall to his death, so I actually kind of want some.
Coming in at number 7 is a character that started out as a pun, but wound up becoming so much more. It's the spectacular Spider-Ham. Going under the name of Peter Porker, and a bit confused as to whether he's a pig with the strength and agility of a spider, or a spider with all the limitations of a pig, Spider-Ham comes from a version of the Marvel Universe where everyone is some form of anthropomorphic animal. Although initially only appearing in parody storylines against villains such as Doctor Doom and Raven the Hunter, Peter Porker would prove he could more than hold his own when he crossed over into the mainstream Marvel Universe to help save the world from the vampiric, soul-sucking inheritors. That'll do, pig. That'll do.
In at 6, Otto Octavius. After brain swapping with Peter, leaving Peter's consciousness in his own dying body, Otto Octavius decided to become a better Spider-Man. A superior one, if you will. During his time as Spider-Man, Otto shattered Scorpion's jaw, blinded the Vulture, and killed the mass murderer Massacre. Man, that's a lot of M's. He also performed numerous involuntary acts, like stopping himself from killing Boomerang, which was later revealed to be because a small bit of Peter was still alive inside of Otto. When the Avengers decided to examine Spider-Man to find a reason for this change of behavior, they couldn't find anything. But after thinking that he expelled Peter, Octavius helped Mayor Jameson assist with the execution of Alistair Smythe. And even though Smythe managed to temporarily take over the raft, Otto managed to defeat his allies, Vulture, Boomerang, and Scorpion, and kill the villain, secretly taking the Vulture as a captive, because, you know, that's what Otto does. During the conflict though, Jameson ordered Spider-Man to execute Smythe when he had escaped, and then using this evidence to blackmail Jameson, Spider-Man forced the mayor to allow the raft to become his new headquarters that he called Spider Island 2, which, I mean, like, it's pretty badass, but like, it's a little shifty, or a lot shifty, but I like your chutzpah, okay? We need these kind of cutthroat tactics in the superhero world, okay? good on you, Otto.
Coming in at number 5, we've got John Jameson, the Astro Spider. That's right, in the alternate universe of Earth 3145, the son of infamous Spidey hater J. Jonah Jameson is actually himself a space-themed version of Spider-Man. During a trip during his day job as an astronaut, John Jameson found himself with a spider inside his spacesuit while being bombarded with cosmic rays. Don't you hate when that happens? These rays merge their genetics and turn John Jameson into the Astro Spider. Instead of web fluid, John's webs are made of psychic energy, and on top of all of his usual spider abilities, he has the telepathic ability to read minds. Something tells me that his father might not approve of his new line of work, however.
And at 4, Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly is a clone of Peter Parker, but goes on to create his own identity of Scarlet Spider. So technically, it isn't Peter, okay? Ben was created by Miles Warren, the supervillain known as the Jackal, to torment actual Spider-Man, and seemingly he died in their first encounter. But the clone actually ended up surviving and exiled himself for 5 years, only returning to New York after learning that Aunt May was sick, because I guess technically he's her aunt, or she's his aunt too. Semantics. After making amends with Peter, Ben fought alongside him as the Scarlet Spider. For a brief period of time, Ben and Peter were actually tricked by Norman Osborn to believe that Ben was the real Peter Parker. So the guy currently going by the name Peter left New York with his wife, Mary Jane, and then left Ben to pick up the mantle of Spider-Man, because, why not? Might as well. During the events of another fight against Osborn, though, as the Green Goblin, Ben was impaled and died in Peter's arms. Also discovering that Peter being the clone was just total BS. It was a lie. So I mean, at least the real Peter didn't die. He would later be revived, but still, this is one of the most iconic Spider-Man alternate versions in existence, so you knew he was gonna be on this list.
At number 3, we've got Gwen Stacy, aka Spider-Gwen, aka Spider-Woman, aka Ghost Spider. Geez, this girl goes by a lot of names. In an alternate universe where Gwen Stacy and not Peter Parker was the one bitten by a radioactive spider, things turned out much differently than the regular Marvel universe. Bullied relentlessly by his peers and without any powers of his own, this version of Peter eventually becomes the Lizard after stealing Dr. Connor's serum and has to be tragically killed by his best friend Gwen before he can hurt anyone else. This leaves Spider-Gwen feeling she must atone for her friend's death and become the greatest hero she can, something she's continued to do over the years with more and more crossovers into the mainstream Marvel universe, where she can help and perhaps even outpace the Peter Parker of their world.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Stan Lee. One of the major elements of Spider-Geddon is that the book is packed with spider beings or spiderlings from every corner of the Marvel universe. Ignore the fact that I messed up saying corner. We're talking Spider UK, Octavia Otto, Spider-Woman, which is Aunt May from Earth 982, which is different from Spider-Man, don't worry, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Ham, and many, many more. This crossover even gave us a real alternate universe version of Spider-Cop, which, as a fan of the PlayStation game, I have to admit makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. And it also made the Spider-Man from that game, who was also in this crossover, very happy. However, in addition to the tribute artwork at the top of the comic, did Marvel sneak another version of Stan Lee in for the fans with a keen eye? It seems so. On page 25 of Spider-Geddon number 5, the final issue in this run, we can see 2 instances of a Spider-Man who looks very familiar, and not in the he's a Spider-Man kind of way. This character is present in both panels 1 and 3 of this page and looks nearly identical to Stan Lee, especially with his whole signature look thing. So by far my favorite version of the character. Rest in peace, Stan Lee.
Coming in at our number 1 spot, we've got to go with Miles Morales, the name that is quickly becoming just as associated with Spider-Man as the iconic Peter Parker. Originally appearing in the Ultimate Marvel universe following the death of their own version of Spider-Man, Miles Morales was a young boy from Brooklyn with an origin story strikingly similar to Peter Parker's, but with some twists. Bitten by a radioactive spider from Osborn Industries, Miles' reason for getting his powers was due to his supervillain uncle, Aaron Davis, otherwise known as the Prowler. Quickly becoming an exciting new take on Spider-Man in his own universe, Miles Morales proved to be such a hit that he was eventually combined into the regular Marvel universe and formed a friendship/mentorship with its still alive version of Peter Parker. While many have become Spider-themed heroes over the years, Miles Morales is a character that best shows the youth and heroism that so many of us love about Spider-Man, and goes to show that anyone is capable of wearing the mask. Miles never gives up and never stops trying, and for that, he might just be the very best Spider-Man.
Number 10, Spider's Man. Another one of my favorite alternate Spider-Men is Spider-Man. He is a version of Peter Parker who died and basically had his consciousness absorbed by experimental spiders. Kinda like DC's Swamp Thing. The spiders come together to give Peter Parker a form, but in reality there is really no more Peter Parker, or Spider-Man, as he died. These spiders merely think like Parker and have his memories. No longer is there a Spider-Man, and in his place instead there is Spiders-Man. This version of Peter Parker first appeared in Spider-Gwen issue number 3 and hails from the alternate reality of Earth 11580. Number 9. Spider-Carnage. There are a few different versions of Carnage Spider-Man, but the one I generally think of when I hear those names put together is the version from the Spider-Man animated series, Spider-Carnage. Spider-Carnage in the animated series is Peter Parker, who becomes filled with rage and grief after losing both his Uncle Ben and his Aunt May, and being made to doubt if he is the true Peter Parker or he is the clone after Ben Reilly comes into existence. It is these darker emotions that Carnage is attracted to when he enters the world via a portal. As Spider-Carnage, Peter's goal was to destroy the entirety of the multiverse before he was convinced by an alternate Uncle Ben to redeem himself, sacrificing himself when he could not remove the Carnage symbiote and ultimately ended up saving the day. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want perhaps even a part 3, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Takuya Yamashiro, aka Spider-Man, or Japanese Spider-Man as he is sometimes known. Though in his home reality of Earth 51778, Yamashiro is simply known as Spider-Man. His origin, backstory, and overall fight against evil forces is quite a bit different than the 616 counterpart of this character. Takuya Yamashiro is a motocross racer who ends up getting the powers of Spider-Man from a dying alien who he stumbles across and who gives him an extract that grants him powers, as well as the spider bracelet. This alien is also from Planet Spider, because that's what this universe is like. There's a planet spider, there's aliens, they have spider powers, get over it. He also has a giant mech robot he can pilot known as the Leopardon, and a spaceship called the Marveler, among other forms of transport, weapons, and equipment. Another fun fact about Yamashiro's Spider-Man is that while he has some of the strengths that belong to a spider, such as superhuman strength and his spider sense, he also has some of the spider's weaknesses, like an aversion to cold temperatures. Which is interesting, because you know, Spider-Man in 616 has all of like the pros usually of being a spider, but like never of the cons of spider-like abilities. Number 7. Spider UK. Spider UK is Billy Braddock. He hails from the alternate reality of Earth 833. His world was destroyed and he finds a new home with the Spider Army following the events of Spider-Verse. As he couldn't return to his universe, he ended up forming the Web Warriors, who claim the Inheritors' former homeworld, Loom World, for their base of operation. Spider UK is a mashup of Captain Britain and Spider-Man from Earth 616. He ends up tragically dying during the events of Spider-Geddon and is mourned by the rest of the Spider Totems. RIP Spider UK. Hopefully, if we got the reality hopping Spider UK in the MCU, he would fare a bit better. Number 6. Spider-Woman, aka Jessica Drew. I assume many of us would love Jessica Drew to somehow show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, considering how powerful and entertaining she is. Jessica Drew doesn't really have a direct relation to Spider-Man or the Spider-Verse at all when you think about it, other than she is also a spider-themed hero and therefore considered like a faded spider totem. But other than that, Jessica is really cool because while sharing the arachnid theme, she really is her own character. She became Spider-Woman after being experimented on as a child, or being cured as a child, depending on which origin you're more familiar with or you consider to be, you know, more true for you as a reader and a fan of the character. She was given a serum that was made using spider DNA. As a child, she grew up mostly while in stasis and awoke a full-grown woman with spider-like powers and abilities. While Spider-Man is more well known for the thwip of his web shooters, Jessica is more well known for the powerful bzzzt of her mighty Venom Blast. Another unique and popular Spider-Man alternate also happens to possess a power that is actually very similar to this one. Can you guess which one that is? Little bit of trivia. Number 5. Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage hails from the 90s animated Spider-Man series. Here, Spider Carnage hailed from an alternate reality where after being cloned and losing both his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, he began to question whether or not he was the real Peter Parker or the clone himself. As this version of Peter was filled with rage, Carnage entered his world via a portal and bonded with this alternate version of Peter Parker, who then became Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage threatened the existence of the entire multiverse, and it took a team of heroic Spider-Men coming together to stop him. Eventually, he was convinced by his still living alternate version of Uncle Ben that what he was doing was wrong, but was unable to remove the Carnage symbiote from him at that point, so he ultimately sacrificed himself to save the world from the evil of Carnage, and kind of the evil of himself, because he was so filled with rage and hate. Number 4. Patient Zero. This version of Peter hails from the reality belonging to the series Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher, the reality of 11080, where Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, was the last known survivor who was forced to take on, you guessed it, the entire Marvel Universe, after the world was ravaged by a deadly and horrifying plague. Here, Peter ends up becoming Patient Zero after a virus, which is the plague, is accidentally released that turns people into violent cannibals. Peter himself devours Rhino during a hockey match and is taken to be researched by the Fantastic Four. However, he does not stay quarantined as the virus spreads to Ben Grimm of the FF, who then releases him. He goes on to become the leader of one of the cannibalistic tribes involved in a turf war. The Punisher ends up killing him after helping to rescue a pregnant Mary Jane in exchange for information that Patient Zero has. I don't think this version of Spider-Man is ever really fully redeemed. He does try to save Mary Jane though, so that's something. Number 3. Spider-Man 3, aka Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man Sony franchise. I know what you're thinking, how is this possible if Andrew's version of Peter is a live-action Spider-Man? How could this happen? Well, I believe that when we begin to crack open the multiverse, anything becomes possible, including this. I would really love to see Andrew Garfield's version of Peter Parker return again, if possible, when it comes to alternate Spider-Men who are out in the multiverse that I'd enjoy seeing more of on their own adventures. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man ranks high among them. You could call him the Amazing Spider-Man, or you could just call him Spider-Man 3, as he later is referred to. I'm hoping at this point people have seen Spider-Man No Way Home, but even then I tried to be a little bit aloof so that there are no spoilers really. Number 2. Captain Universe. That's right, there is an alternate reality where Spider-Man decided to keep the power of the Enigma Force. While in the main continuity of the comics Earth 616, Peter only temporarily became Captain Universe. In the alternate reality of Earth 13, he actually keeps said powers and remains Captain Universe. Of course, he doesn't live forever. Despite how cosmically powerful Peter Parker is here on Earth 13, he still ends up defeated in the fight against the Inheritors. Captain Universe here ended up being overcome by Solus, the Inheritors' leader. While his power remained too great for the rest of the Inheritors to conquer and drain, Solus was more experienced and was able to handle such great power with ease, killing Captain Universe. Of course, in the animated universe, where there don't seem to be any Inheritors yet, he could still be alive and could still be well, if he exists there. Let him exist there, please. Number 1. MCU Miles Morales. One alternate I have been dying to see ever since the MCU started up their own Spider-Man film franchise is that of a live-action Miles Morales. His potential existence has been alluded to a few times in the MCU, but we still haven't managed to meet Miles there yet. If Across the Spider-Verse also wanted and was able to partner with the MCU creative team, perhaps we could see a live-action Miles show up there and potentially even make his way into the MCU canon and narrative. I don't know about you, but I would love a whole MCU franchise to be built all around Miles Morales' Spider-Man, and I think Across the Spider-Verse could be a great place to introduce Miles' live-action MCU counterpart. Also, then we get Miles and Miles. There's gotta be some alternate Miles out in the multiverse because Miles is also Spider-Man. Number 10. Ezekiel Sims. Ezekiel Sims is also referred to as Old Man Spider-Man. In his reality, he was the one to take up the Spider-Man mantle after Peter Parker was killed by Morlun. Ezekiel hails from Earth 4 and is an alternate reality version of the 616 Ezekiel Sims. The Ezekiel Sims of Earth 616 was the one who locked away Cindy Moon, aka Silk, in order to protect her from Morlun, his enemy, who he knew was tracking Cindy. Old Man Spider-Man Ezekiel Sims made his first appearance in the Edge of the Spider-Verse series in issue number 5. He also happens to have a really cool looking suit. He was created by Gerard Way and Jake Wyatt. Number 9. Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is Jessica Drew, or at least she is one of the Spider-Women. More importantly, she is the one that we'll be talking about for this point on this list. Jessica Drew is more removed from the world of Peter Parker Spider-Man, having her own unique origin story that doesn't mimic the tried and true spider bite, loss of Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility, yada yada yada. Instead, Jessica Drew was experimented on by her father and the High Evolutionary, likely in disguise. Possibly in disguise. Jessica spent much of her early years in stasis, and when she awoke she was a fully grown young adult. Jessica ended up in the hands of Hydra, but would eventually break away from her more villainous origins and end up as the hero that we've come to know as Spider-Woman, who has also had a career as a successful sleuth and PI. Jessica Drew made her first appearance in Marvel Spotlight issue number 32 back in the 70s, and was created by Archie Goodwin, Sal Buscema, Jim Mooney, and Marie Severin. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are as excited for Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 as we are, and you want more lists about it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up, because I want to tell you more about what I want for this movie and what I want for all of us. Number 8. Lady Spider. Lady Spider is an alternate I'm particularly fond of. I just love her overall design and the fact that she is from the turn of the century. Lady Spider is Maybelle Riley. Her father was an inventor and inspired May to become an inventor herself and ultimately a hero. She used parts he had in his garage after he passed away to build her own spider suit and her own web shooters and 4 mechanical arms, which also granted her the ability to wall crawl. While Maybelle doesn't have any superpowers, she is considered to be quite intelligent and resourceful. And honestly, she doesn't need powers to be a cool inventor Spidey alternate. After all, inventing is a hugely important skill of Spider-Man's too that often gets overlooked or forgotten. Lady Spider first appeared in Spider-Verse issue number 1 and was created by Robbie Thompson and Dennis Madrid. Number 7. Spider-Girl. For this Spider-Girl, we're talking about Anya Corazon. She is an alternate Spider-Folk from Earth 616. Anya herself is another Spider Totem who gets her powers from a more mystical source known as the Spider Society, where she was granted a spider tattoo that basically gave her spider-like powers. At least, that's how it seemed initially. Or you could look at it like she got spider-like powers and then she got the tattoo from those. In truth, the Spider Society had only unlocked Anya's true potential though, allowing her to tap into and access her natural powers, which were simply lying dormant. Now, however, Anya no longer possesses these same powers, instead having powers that mimic Spider-Man following the events of Spider Island. Anya, or Aranya as she is also referred to, made her first appearance in the 2004 Amazing Fantasy series in issue number 1. She was created by Fiona Avery and Mark Brooks. Number 6. Spider-Man 2099. Of course, one we all expect to see based on their appearance in the promotional material and the post-credits scene. However, that doesn't mean that fans everywhere aren't hyped and of course wanting this to happen, and if you're one of those folks, congrats, because it's definitely going to be a thing. Miguel O'Hara is Spider-Man 2099. He first made his appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue 365, where a preview was featured for the Spider-Man 2099 series. He is from the alternate future year of 2099 from the alternate Earth of 928. Here Miguel became Spider-Man after trying out his own experimental and dangerous procedure. Despite the procedure being tampered with, it surprisingly worked and Miguel received spider-like powers and abilities, making him the Spider-Man of the future. Number 5. Spider-Punk. One of my favorite alternate Spideys out there has always been Hobart Brown. Brown is the Spider-Man of Earth 138. He made his first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man Spider-Verse story in issue number 10 of the 2014 ASM series. Hobby was created by Dan Slott and Olivier Capoil and is known for his punk rock attitude. He fights his universe's version of Venom, V-E-N-O-M, with an army of amps. Hobby Brown is also another version of 616 Hobby Brown, who currently goes by the codename Hornet and works as a hero. But originally, this Hobby from Earth 616 was the first version of the short-lived villain Prowler, making his first appearance in the comics back in the late 60s. I know, now when we think Prowler we all think Aaron Davis, but actually, Hobby Brown, original Prowler. Number 4. Spider-Man. Spider-Man is another awesome alternate of Spider-Man and of Aunt May. She first made her appearance in the original What If series in issue number 23, where we answered the question, what if Aunt May had been bitten by that radioactive spider instead? This all happens as a result of Peter leaving his lunch at home on the day when he attended the science demonstration with his class. Aunt May was the one who ran into the radioactive spider and was bit by it. Initially, Aunt May intended to use her powers to perform stunts in order to earn money to support her family. However, the villain Leapfrog showed up, prompting May to fight against him and defeat him, turning her into a hero from that point on. Spider-Man was created by Steve Skeets and Alan Kupperberg. Since appearing in What If, she's made several other appearances throughout the Spidey comics and Marvel multiverse. Spider-Man hails from the alternate reality of Earth 3123, and in that reality, Uncle Ben's still alive! Number 3. Spider-Man India. Or just Spider-Man, Spider-Man, as he's known in his own reality. Pavitra Prabhakar is Spider-Man in the reality of 50101. Pavitra grew up poor in India, but due to his brilliant mind wins a scholarship and is able to move to Mumbai with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Bim. While there, he receives spider-like powers from a yogi who hopes Pavitra will use them to save the world from an ancient evil that threatens it. Pavitra loses his Uncle Bim as a result of him not choosing to use his powers to help a woman who is being attacked. His uncle does try to help and dies in the process. Pavitra first appeared in Spider-Man India in issue number 1 and was created by Jeevan Kang, Suresh Sitharman, and Sharad Devarajan. Number 2. Spider-Man Noir. While we did get to see Spider-Man Noir in the first film Into the Spider-Verse, where he was voiced by Nicolas Cage, I think that's just all the more reason that fans would love to see him return in this follow-up film. Nicolas Cage was the perfect casting for Spider-Man Noir, which made him an instant fan favorite among those who were introduced to the Spider-Verse via the film. In the comics, Spider-Man Noir is also considered a popular character. He hails from the Noir-verse of Earth 90214. Spider-Man Noir made his first appearance in the comics in Spider-Man Noir issue number 1 and was created by David Hine and Marko Djurjevic. Number 1. Spider-Woman. May Parker may be more well known by her former mantle of Spider-Girl, but she is currently all grown up and known as Spider-Woman in the comics. She is the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson Parker from the reality of MC2. In this alternate universe, heroes were more prone to retiring, settling down, and having families. As such, Peter, in this reality, ends up having a daughter and a son with MJ. Mayday Parker, it turns out, and her brother both end up developing spider-like powers, and eventually May would become Spider-Girl and later Spider-Woman, following in her dad's footsteps. I think it would be especially cool to see this alternate from Earth 982 alongside another Spider-Man who is only just having kids or, you know, hasn't had them yet. Could be like fun and kinda awkward. May is a fan favorite, so this is one that I think a lot of us are hoping to see in the next film, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Number 10. Poison. Poison is an alternate version of Spider-Man who hails from the reality of Earth 70134. This reality comes from the What If comic, What If Spider-Man the Other? In it, Spider-Man ends up defeating as opposed to embracing his inner spider, which meant he remained within his cocoon under Brooklyn Bridge, unable to really fully resurrect. The Venom symbiote sensed that this had happened and left its current host racing to Peter's side in an attempt to once more bond with him. Mwahaha. While Peter attempted to internally fight off the Venom symbiote while in stasis, he was ultimately unsuccessful, and something new instead was born. This was Poison, an incomplete version of Peter Parker bonded more intensely with the Venom symbiote. This version of the hero returns home only to terrify MJ, who has been awaiting him for a long time. I don't know about you, but I say move over, finger guns, Peter Venom, and let's get Poison in the MCU. A villainous version of the hero and villain joined together that I think would be cool to have on the big screen, and especially to see face off against a team of heroic spider alternates. Number 9. Spider-Man. One of my all-time favorite Spider-Man alternates is actually a female version of the character. We are talking about Aunt May as Spider-Man. She became an alternate version of the superhero in a What If, and from there went on to join the other Spider-Folks from across the multiverse in the fight against the Inheritors. We've also seen a few other stories involving Aunt May's spider-themed hero, who typically fights alongside her family unit, her husband Uncle Ben, and her nephew Peter Parker. Peter is the brains of the operation, whereas Ben provides the heart of the team, and of course May provides the strength and fighting prowess. I don't know about you, but I would just love to see a bunch of alternate Mays also show up in the MCU alongside some of these alternate villains, and of course probably alternate Spider-Men that we'll be getting. And Spider-Man is also technically one of those too, so that's a bonus. She's like alternate Aunt May and alternate Spider-Man. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to talk more about alternate spider folks that we would love to see in the MCU, because goodness knows there's a lot of them at this point, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Spider-Side. Spider-Side is one of Peter's evil clones. I say one of because, well, he's had a few over the years. Spider-Side was an alternate Spider-Man clone created by the villain Jackal. Jackal attempted to convince Spider-Side that he was the true Peter Parker, and it was later revealed that he was created to destroy Peter, Mary Jane, Ben Reilly, and Kane Parker. However, he failed in this mission. Spider-Side has powers similar to Peter Parker, being one of his clones, but he can also alter his body at the molecular level, shapeshifting somewhat, extending his limbs like Mr. Fantastic, and changing his density. He was also also known initially for being more prone to violence. We've seen Spider-Man take on bad guys before on the big screen and in the MCU, but it would be pretty cool to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man take on an evil clone of himself. Clone Saga in the MCU, will it happen? Number 7. 90s Animated Series. A version of Spider-Man that many fans grew up with was the 90s animated series version. The 90s animated Spider-Man series ran for 5 seasons. Actually, I think it's the second longest series in comparison to X-Men for Marvel animated series. This is the same universe that Spider-Carnage hails from and eventually saw Spider-Man team up with a ton of alternate reality versions of himself to try and take down Spider-Carnage. The awesome thing about the 90s series is there are lots of alternates within that world itself. Not only do we gain access to the main Spider-Man if we decided to go there, but also all the other Spider-Man alternates that exist in the animated multiverse. Also, the 90s was just a great time for Marvel animated series in general, so of course we want to see the 90s animated Spider-Man. Probably just as much as we're hyped about a series that's going to take us back to the golden days of animated X-Men. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. X-Men 97. Let's go! Number 6. Scarlet Spider. Kane Parker hasn't been the only one to wear the Scarlet Spider mantle, but he's definitely one of my all-time favorites. Kane Parker was a failed creation of a Peter Parker clone. He was defective and his degradation was so severe that it also seemed to affect his sanity in a way as well. Kane also had a few unique abilities in his early days. His spider sense was kind of also precognitive, allowing him to kind of see into the future, but at the cost of his sanity, making him more and more insane every time he experienced a vision. Yeah, Kane had a lot of problems. I think that's why I like Kane actually, because he had so many flaws but also so many quirks. He also had the Mark of Kane, which allowed him to use the same microscopic hooks that allow Spider-Man to wall crawl to disfigure his victims. He could brand and burn the face or body of his victims with just the touch of his hand, leaving behind what others would refer to as the Mark of Kane. He's changed a lot since those early days, but I would love to see either a nod to his more modern iteration or even the original 90s version of this character. So moody, so much hair. Number 5. Mayday Parker. Another alternate version of Spider-Man that I'd love to see, and I think a lot of us would when it comes to live action Spider folks, is Mayday Parker. Now, there are a lot of ways the MCU could actually approach introducing this character. We could see her introduced via her being the daughter of maybe an MJ and Peter from an alternate world, or we could see her as being the daughter of Peter and MJ of Earth 199999, aka the MCU universe, but from an alternate future. Either could be really cool. May Parker is also just a really fun and interesting character to explore. She originally hails from the MC2 universe, the reality of Earth 982. In this universe, a lot of heroes retired, settled down, and had kids. May was basically one of those kids and also boasts of one of the longest running self-titled series set in that universe, with her series Spider-Girl, which actually ran for just over 100 issues. Like, wow, that's a lot of issues. I think it also ran for almost 20 years. It was like 1998? No, maybe not 20 years, but close to 10? Ran for a while. It was like 90s to early 2000s, which is impressive for it not being main continuity, I'm just saying. Number 4. The Cinematic Amazing Spider-Man. This is the Peter Parker who technically hails from the reality of Earth 120703, also known as the reality of the Amazing Spider-Man film series. This portrayal of live-action Spidey was played by Andrew Garfield. I always think of him as the coolest on-screen portrayal of the character, the coolest version of Pete with maybe the best hair? I don't know, let me know your vote for who you would think has the best hair of all of the live-action Spider-Men that we've had thus far. Of course, we all want and expect that Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man will make his way to the MCU. Why? Because we are opening up that multiverse, and the easiest alternatives to incorporate into live action are of course other live action alternatives like this version of Spider-Man himself. The question is, will we see any alternates of Gwen show up to possibly give Spider-Man a sense of closure? I think it would be really cool for his character to at least, get a say goodbye in person, even if it was just to an alternate version of that character. Number 3. Ghost Spider. Cue an alternate version of Gwen Stacy. How cool would it be to see Gwen make a comeback in the films but as a hero? Spider-Gwen, or as she's currently known, Ghost Spider. The Gwen Stacy of Earth 65 did not actually die. Instead, in this reality, Gwen receives the fateful spider bite and is transformed into a hero, while her good friend Peter Parker, who is often picked on, attempts to make himself like Spider-Girl, creating a formula that transforms him into the raging reptilian villain the Lizard. In the fight against Lizard, Gwen accidentally kills Peter, not even knowing he was who she was really fighting. It's a different, possibly even more tragic version of that original story from Earth 616. Ghost Spider today is a fan favorite among Spider-Verse fans, and who knows, maybe she could join the MCU still played by Emma Stone, showing up as an alternate Gwen who would become a hero in the universe that she hails from. That could be interesting. Granted, I'd also be cool with seeing animated Spider-Gwen come into the MCU from Into the Spider-Verse. Either way, I just feel like it might be easier if everything's all live action, but I'll take any Spider-Gwen that you want to give me. Number 2, Miles Morales. One of the Spider-Mans that I think we most want to see in live action joining the MCU is Miles Morales. Heck, I feel like I'd even take an animated Miles being integrated into the MCU. That would also be super cool. Miles becomes Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, following Peter Parker's seeming death and then later secret return, but kinda into retirement. Peter passes the torch on to Miles, who later, after the destruction of his universe, ends up coming to 616, thanks to the kindness he showed Molecule Man, and the fact that Miles apparently was carrying around a burger in the pocket of his suit, which is kind of questionable, but also kinda excellent. Ever since then, while originating from Earth 1610, he has remained a mainstay of Earth 616, and is known there simply as Spider-Man. Yeah, on Earth 616, we have a few Spider-Mans right now. Number 1, Raimi-verse Spider-Man. A version of Spider-Man that we most want in the MCU, at least that I most want in the MCU when it comes to Spider folks, and when we're talking about a cinematic multiverse standpoint, definitely, has to be Tobey Maguire's version from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Honestly, I think this is the version people are most hyped to potentially see as we venture into the multiverse. I know I am really hyped to see this return. I mean, Andrew Garfield will also be cool to see, but I personally have a soft spot for Raimi's Spider-Verse. As weird as it got at the end there, I still am a fan of it. And anyways, it got weird through really no fault of Raimi's, or I don't think Tobey's, in terms of my understanding of that whole way that we wrap that up. Tobey Maguire for me was always a great casting choice, especially when it comes to his take on Peter Parker. I know I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing his somewhat shy yet determined take on the character return in Spider-Man No Way Home. If that does happen, but I really think it's gonna happen. Number 10, Symbiote Spider-Man. While technically still 616 Peter Parker, Symbiote Spider-Man could be considered an alternate in the sense that it was a very specific version of Peter, or a very specific time in his life where he took to using more brutal and violent tactics to deal with criminals. This was of course brought upon by the alien symbiote who had bonded to Peter and who he had mistaken for just being a new suit initially. Eventually, Spider-Man in his black suit realized that the suit itself was alive and had kind of taken him over. He fought hard, sought out help, and would eventually become separated from the suit, who otherwise did not wish to leave him. In so doing, Spider-Man would unwillingly create an even worse villain in Venom. At least, initially. Venom might be a hero now, but of course he did not start out that way, instead being a determined and relentless enemy to Spider-Man in his early years in the comics, who also sometimes was prone to cannibalistic tendencies and threats. Number 9, Superior Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man is an alternate version of Spider-Man who actually hails from the reality of Earth 616 as well. Superior Spider-Man was the name given to Otto Octavius' version of Spider-Man, which came about after a plot to steal Spider-Man's body was successful. Otto's body was failing, and so he decided to live on by swapping bodies with Peter Parker, which meant that Peter's consciousness ended up dying in Otto's failing body, while Otto's consciousness got to live on inside Peter's young and healthy bod. However, Peter managed to convince Otto to be a hero before he passed away, and so Otto set out to do so, aiming to be a better hero even than Peter had been. Of course, Octavius in the end wasn't really cut out for heroics, although he did do his best. He struggled at times with making the right choices and was also prone to doling out more severe forms of punishment for villains and using more sinister methods when it came to keeping the streets safe. In the end, he chose to relinquish the title and body back to Peter, who still managed to live on via his subconscious, which still remained attached to his original body. And friends, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by smashing that like button. I mean, there's definitely a lot of evil Spider-Men out there, so I'm pretty sure we could keep going with this one. Number 8, the CEO. In an alternate 2099 reality we see explored in the video game Spider-Man Edge of Time, Peter-Man actually ends up being the big villain. In this reality, Peter goes on to become the CEO of Alchemax. His goal was noble, but kinda selfish and also kinda messed up. He hoped to use time gateway technology to channel quantum energy and bring back the lives of all of those that he'd lost. In this reality, Peter Parker was still Spider-Man, but either faked his death or just let everyone believe he had died so he could work behind the scenes as Alchemex's CEO, getting everything in place so that he could eventually put his own plan into motion. This version of Peter ends up getting erased from time after Miguel O'Hara's Spider-Man beats him up and manages to basically reset young Peter's story, thereby convincing Peter to never become the CEO of Alchemex and preventing this evil future self from ever existing. Number 7. Asset 42. Asset 42 was likely one of the first clones ever made by the Assessor of Miles Morales. This clone was considered to be a burner clone and only lasted a few issues, but what a roller coaster of a ride those few issues he appeared in were. This evil version of Miles Morales first appeared in issue 17 of the Miles Morales Spider-Man series, and shortly thereafter perished in a fight against Miles. Miles seemingly kills Asset 42 in this fight, but in reality the clone was revealed to have only really been made to last for about a day. So it's highly likely that even without fighting Miles, he would have just died, as he was already breaking down and basically turning into liquid-like goo, as is evident in his final fight against the original one and only Miles Morales. Asset 42 was in league with Ultimatum and helped to kidnap the real Miles for that villain. Number 6. Ultimatum. Ultimatum is an evil alternate version of Hero and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Or really, he's the main counterpart to Miles, who hails from Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. Ultimatum is the version of Miles that existed on Earth 616, his 616 counterpart. 616 Miles was a criminal who allied himself with the Kingpin. Growing up and belonging to a crime family, he proved his loyalty to Wilson Fisk and was permitted by the Kingpin to later on retire, because he was so loyal. However, after his wife died, he decided to do what Kingpin himself had ultimately decided against when it came to his dead wife Vanessa, to find an alternate version of her in the multiverse who was alive so that he could reunite with her. Miles ended up in the reality of Earth 1610 as a result. Eventually, he would return to Earth 616, only to find that Miles of 1610 had emigrated there. Ultimatum at this point decided to set things right and planned to send Miles and his family back to 1610, taking back his rightful place as the Miles Morales of 616, and aiming to become a prominent criminal and villain in New York thereafter.
Halfway through into number 5, Dark Spider-Man. When Matt Gargan was the host of the Venom symbiote, Norman Osborn gave Venom a medication that reset the symbiote to the size it was when it originally possessed Spider-Man. However, the symbiote resumed its feral traits whenever Venom was attacking an enemy. Osborn formed his version of the Avengers, providing new identities to some of his former Thunderbolts. Norman introduced this guy, Matt Gargan, as the Amazing Spider-Man in his new Avengers. During the Dark Avengers' first mission against Morgan Le Fay, Morgan's magic affected Venom, causing him to lose and gain control of himself randomly. Venom bit Ares and fought Hawkeye, which in this case was Bullseye, and after Morgan was defeated, Hawkeye promised to kill Mac one day for trying to eat him while he was under Morgan's control. And that's expected. Basically, another evil Spider-Man, but I mean it wasn't exactly Peter Parker, but still, it counts. It's still terrifying. That's the trouble with the secret identity though, okay? It's easy to be impersonated. Arrow Season 3 for example.
Coming in at number 4, we have the emo symbiote influenced Peter Parker from Sam Raimi's film Spider-Man 3. We've all seen the memes of Tobey Maguire dancing and threatening to put a little dirt in our eye, but in my opinion, this is one of the more interesting depictions of Peter Parker before he decides to get rid of his symbiote suit and accidentally causes the creation of Venom. While many interpretations of this story always show Peter becoming more violent and prone to anger as the suit begins to affect his mental state, the fact that the suit seems to only make Peter more unlikable and cool in a dickish way feels like pretty interesting commentary on what a more badass or dark Spider-Man would even look like. Even if out of context or combined with the movie's other problems, it can come across as pretty laughable. But hey, those dance moves still count as pretty scary, right?
Can 100% confirm that was definitely scary.
Number 3. Pestilence. Pestilence hails from an alternate AOA, Age of Apocalypse reality, the reality of Earth 5701. Here, Spider-Man ends up being chosen to become one of Apocalypse's 4 Horsemen of Death. He takes on the role of Pestilence, and this much more evil version of the character, allied with mutant supervillain Apocalypse, also really looks the part too. He has fangs, which are poisonous, and 6 arms, really looking more like a Spider-Man than most of his heroic counterparts typically do. Here, Peter was actually chosen to become one of Apocalypse's 4 Horsemen because he was considered so inherently good at heroics and as a person, I imagine. Apocalypse chose heroes he identified as the best among them to become his horseman in this reality. Number 2. Spider Doppelganger. The Doppelganger, or more specifically, the Spider Doppelganger, or the Spider-Man Doppelganger if you want, was originally an enemy created by the Magus during the Infinity War event. He was one of the many evil doppelgangers created to fight against the superhero community, which opposed Magus in the conflict. Although, like many of the other doppelgangers, the Spider-Man Doppelganger would die during Infinity War. He wouldn't stay dead though, as so many of the other doppels had. Instead, Spider Doppelganger ended up being resurrected by Demogoblin and would end up joining with him for a time, acting as his sidekick and being treated kinda like his pet. Spider Doppelganger would also go on to team up with such villainous spider enemies as Carnage and Shriek. In fact, he'd actually become for a time very close and loyal to Shriek, who treated him as though he were her own son. Number 1. Norman Osborn. On the reality of Earth 44145 lives a version of Norman Osborn who becomes imbued with spider-like powers and abilities. Of course, this being Norman, he decides to use said power in his pursuit of more power, not inherently being the hero type. Peter Parker, who used to work for Norman, reveals his plan to Norman's son and Peter's friend Harry in a letter. This leads to Peter's death, which in turn motivates Harry to fight his father. Norman Osborn as Spider-Man would go on to team up with Superior Spider-Man and Spiders-Man briefly during the Spider-Geddon event, but would end up partnered solely with Spiders-Man after suggesting that to defeat the Inheritors, they simply trap them on Earth 616. Obviously, as that was Superior Spider-Man's homeworld. Number 10. Kane Parker. Kane was one of the first evil clones ever made of Spider-Man, and really, he wasn't evil of his own choosing. He was kind of just a bad dude because he was so defective and was quickly degenerating. His degeneration made Kane somewhat insane, and his powers also didn't help. His own version of Spider-Sense was more precognitive, giving him visions of the future. The problem? With each vision he viewed, he would become more and more unhinged. Kane Parker would start out as being more of a sinister figure, but as time went on, he'd really become more of a moody anti-hero in the comics. In some cases, he was also only originally an antagonist because his motives were misunderstood by Peter. Number 9. The Jackal. At one point, another clone who was previously considered to be one of the best clones with the most potential for good also turned to the dark side. Yes, this clone was none other than Ben Reilly. Having recalled all of his deaths from when Miles was experimenting on Ben in an attempt to perfect the cloning process, Ben became somewhat unhinged. He ended up defeating and killing Miles Warren only to bring him back as a clone and convince Miles to work for him. This would result in Ben adopting the mantle of the Jackal for himself and building a clone army of Spider-Man's previously dead friends, allies, and even villains, as well as building the New U Technologies Corporation. In exchange for the clones' cooperation, Ben provided them with pills that would help to stave off the degeneration while he worked to perfect the cloning process himself, and a frequency technology that would substitute the pill for, well, likely only a chosen few, because Ben probably wanted to control the other clones. He was like, I'm good, but also I'm kind of controlling you. Well, he meant well. When Peter was approached to join the Jackal, who was revealed to him to be Ben, he simply refused, believing that the Jackal was a perfect example of having all the power, but none of the responsibility. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list like it where we talk about even more evil Spider-Men, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There are surprisingly a lot of evil Spider-Men out there. Number 8. Ghost Spider. While redeemed in the end, initially when we met Peter Parker, who was to become Ghost Spider, we would learn of just how evil he was. Ghost Spider is the Peter Parker from Reality Earth 11618, where he was previously known as simply the Amazing Spider. Not to be confused with Ghost Spider, who is Gwen Stacy from an alternate reality. I think that's Earth 65. So now there's kind of two Ghost Spiders, but anyways. This version of Ghost Spider makes an appearance in the 2011 ASM Annual number 38. Here we learn what happens when Uncle Ben does not die, but instead gets to live out his life alongside his nephew. He ends up teaching Peter that with great power comes a great responsibility to keep said power. As a result, he ends up training Peter, who eventually not only becomes a successful hero, but also a successful businessman and a successful scientist. Uncle Ben and Peter decide to use their scientific knowledge to lure other Spider-Men from the multiverse to their reality, and then drain them of their power to be used to booster or bolster the Amazing Spider's own abilities and powers, making him even more powerful with each transfer. However, the Spider-Man of Earth 616, when caught in this trap, was able to convince the Amazing Spider that what he was doing was pretty wrong. In the end, he sacrificed his own powers and life to help the Spider-Man of 616 escape. However, he didn't actually die, but ended up in a coma, with his soul trapped in hell. Eventually, he would awaken and return as Ghost Spider. Redemption, baby.
And it's 7, Doppelganger. Introduced in Infinity War #1, Doppelganger was an evil, near-minded duplicate of Spider-Man that was created by Magus during the battle known as the Infinity War. The 6-armed creature was one of many doppelgangers created by Magus using Anthropomorpho's M bodies during this conflict. Although the doppelganger was killed during the Infinity War by Hobgoblin, he was mysteriously revived by the Demogoblin. When Magus was defeated by Adam Warlock at the conclusion of the Infinity War, all of the doppelgangers were destroyed except for the Spider Doppelganger, thanks to Demogoblin's magic forming a psychic link between him and Demogoblin, or I guess Demogoblin and Doppelganger. For a time, he was a pet to Demogoblin, but the two went their separate ways after a very interesting fight. Doppelganger later joined up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and in the process, Shriek became a sort of adopted mother to Doppelganger, which made him even more dangerous. So, no thanks.
Coming in at number 6, we have The Other. Coming from a particularly weird era of Spider-Man history that seemed obsessed with turning Spider-Man's powers into having a magical and mystical origin, The Other, or Miss Arrow as her human disguise would come to be called, was a spider deity that apparently chose Peter Parker as being worthy of its powers, heavily implying itself to have controlled the radioactive spider that bit Peter in the first place. While initially bonding spiritually with Spider-Man himself and giving him a whole host of new powers, The Other eventually manifested as an entirely separate being and disguised itself as a teacher at Peter Parker's school. With much of this storyline since having been wiped from canon by the events of One More Day, it's still incredibly weird to look back and go, oh yeah, Peter Parker had a teacher that was technically the manifestation of his spider powers in creepy human form. Totally normal.
Number 5. Pestilence. In 2005's Cable and Deadpool number 15, we see Deadpool dropped in Earth 5701 while on a search for Cable, where the supervillain Apocalypse has conquered New York and then changed 4 superheroes into his horsemen, one being the Spider-Man of this world. Alongside Famine, who's the Blob, Death, who is Archangel, and an alternate Cable known as War, they all serve under Apocalypse and aim to protect him at all costs. Now known as Pestilence, this 4-armed and 4-legged version of Spider-Man is not one you want to get close to, especially when you learn about his poisonous fangs and his hunger for human bones. Check him out for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4. The Other. In the 2005-2006 storyline of the same title, we see Spider-Man begin a transformation to his wild side. Peter began having these strange symptoms and dreams of Uncle Ben and spiders. Thinking he might be dying, Peter threw himself more and more into his crime fighting, especially against the scientific vampire known as Morlun, as Morlun wreaked havoc by beating Spider-Man so badly that he ended up in the hospital, and also by smacking Mary Jane around. Peter got to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore and reached his limits. In 2006 Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 3, we see Spider-Man pin Morlun down and kill him with a bite to the head. After what we all assume was Peter's death, we see Peter erupt from a cocoon with new powers and a newfound dedication to embracing his spider side that he refers to as The Other. Even though he embraced his dark side for a while, he does eventually come back to his senses and becomes the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man once more. Number 3. Patton Parnell. Definitely one of the scariest looking Spider-Men, Patton Parnell has been described as a sociopathic version of Spider-Man who made the exact opposite decisions that Peter had. Growing up with an abusive uncle, Uncle Ted, Parnell was always a bit of a weird one, as he found joy in experimenting on animals and perversely spying on his next door neighbor Sarah Jane. Like other Spider-Men, Patton was bit by a spider, however, his body's reaction to it was a little bit different. Instead of turning into a superhero, he actually gained the ability to turn into a spider-like monster and started to seek revenge on those who had treated him poorly, starting with his uncle. He eventually leads Sarah Jane to his house and reveals his new form to her, and needless to say, she was terrified and not at all impressed. And then after a bite to the neck, the next morning we see hundreds of baby spiders coming out of Sarah Jane's neck. Thankfully, Parnell doesn't stick around for too long, as just after 3 days of having his power, he is drained of all his life force by Morlun. Check out this twisted story in 2014's Edge of Spider-Verse number 4. Number 2. The Spider. Showcased in the Exile series, we're introduced to one of the darkest Spider-Men to date. On Earth 15, Peter Parker was a sociopathic mass murderer who was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences, and merged with the Carnage symbiote before being recruited by the Timebreakers into the Weapon X team. Using none of his powers for good, the Spider joined the other members of the team to try to conquer the Earth instead of actually helping them, finding nothing but joy in killing and torturing. It took a blast from Firestar to end his reign of terror alongside the other rebels. What makes this version of Spider-Man so terrifying is that he's one of the few Spideys who actually keeps the symbiote his entire career. With the symbiote's powers combined with Peter's evil rage, this puts the Spider at the same power level as Carnage at his strongest point, making him a truly frightening foe. Why not check him out for yourself in 2002's Exiles number 12 so you can see just how truly merciless this killer is. Number 1. Zombie Spider-Man. Now, not a whole lot is known about Earth 2149 Peter Parker's life before the zombie apocalypse, but it's presumed that it was similar to his 616 counterpart. On his search for the Necronomicon, the presumed source of the zombie infection, Peter ends up getting bit by Colonel America, who is a zombie at the time, and becomes infected. With his mind still relatively human, he hurries home to try and get his Aunt May and Mary Jane to safety. However, with the virus spreading quickly through his body, he winds up killing and eating them both. Alongside the other superpowered zombies, they ate almost all life on Earth until they ate Galactus, which granted them all the powers of the Power Cosmic, which they used to travel the universe, eating other worlds in their endless search for more food. After 40 years of eating worlds, they finally returned to Earth, still hungry to find Reed Richards' dimensional portal so they could finally continue their quest. However, Spidey noticed that his hunger was completely gone. Regaining his sense of justice, Spidey alongside some other good zombies found themselves locked in a battle with the other zombie heroes, trying their very hardest to convince them that their hunger was also gone and they could become heroes once again. Coming in at number 10, we have Spider-Wolf. Now, not a whole lot is known about this version of Spider-Man or his origin other than that he hails from Earth 13,989, a universe that is a little bit more gothic and assumed to be home to a number of werewolves. Now, the Spider-Man of this universe is no exception, but you probably already guessed that based off of his appearance alone. Going by the name Spider-Wolf, he has all the normal powers you would normally associate with Spider-Man combined with the strength and the speed of a werewolf, which, as one can imagine, would make him incredibly powerful and a little bit scary to be around. Realizing this, the villain Karn sought out to defeat Spider-Wolf before he was recruited by the heroes of the Spider-Verse, as he could have been one of the Spider Army's most powerful allies. Karn is successful in taking him out for good before moving on to the other Spider-Folk in hopes of outsmarting the Spider Army. Created by Dan Slott, this is unfortunately all we know about this version of Spider-Man. Maybe we'll see him again in the future, who knows, but why not check him out for yourself in their first and last appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 11. Number 9, we have Man-Spider. Now, there have been multiple iterations of Man-Spider throughout the years, such as the one that appeared in 1982's Marvel Fanfare number 1, when Spider-Man was exposed to a machine that turned people into primitive monsters, making him the Man-Spider, or in 1971's The Amazing Spider-Man number 100, when Peter tried to cure himself of his powers, but instead mutated them further, giving him 6 arms. I want to focus on Peter Parker, who is Earth's 6078, because although his story isn't dark full of murder, it is dark as in he loses what makes him the lovable hero. Now in this iteration, Peter gains his powers in a similar manner to ours, but Aunt May dies in an accident instead of Uncle Ben. This, for some reason, leads Peter to reveal his powers to his uncle, asking him to be his showbiz manager. And needless to say, like many talented folk, Peter ended up getting a very big head and started neglecting his duties as a hero, showing off his powers for fame and profit instead, while other heroes took care of the villains. Now this caused some serious strain on his relationship with Uncle Ben, and it eventually got to the point where they stopped talking, and Peter just sends him money now out of habit to feel less guilt. Check out the sad excuse of a Spider-Man in his first appearance in 2006's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 8. Number 8, the Imperfect Spider-Man. Coming to us from the critical flop Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, we have Earth's 50,701's Peter Parker, and from what we see, he is basically Earth's 616 Peter Parker with a bit of a darker twist. Now, if you're not familiar with the plot of this video game from 2005, that is absolutely okay. You did not miss very much, and it was not a good game at all. In the story mode, we see Spider-Man, the Thing, Wolverine, and Elektra captured and injected with a drug developed by an alien scientist that corrupted them and turned them into bloodthirsty killers. The now brutally violent and eager to fight heroes face off against each other in a Coliseum type battle. Thankfully, it didn't last long before Spider-Man was able to fight the drug and escape, leading the fight against a group called the Imperfects that had been infected with the same drug. Now, obviously they come out on top because it would make for a pretty terrible story if they didn't. Although this game was a massive flop, it did spin off into a very interesting series called Marvel Nemesis, The Imperfects, and within 6 issues they did a better job of explaining exactly what happened in that universe. So if you're curious, check out this limited run for yourself, or honestly, if you're a fan of bad video games and you still have a GameCube lying around, maybe try and find the game. Number 7, Spider-Cyborg. On the apocalyptic Earth 2818, operating in the year 2099 AD, we have a slightly darker version of Peter Parker who, alongside his spider abilities, gains some cybernetic enhancements as well. Equipped with cybernetics covering most of his body, giving him stronger legs, metallic claws, enhanced vision, and even a sonic cannon for an arm, this Spider-Man does not come to play. Essentially, Spider-Cyborg was the perfect combination of Marvel Spider-Man and DC Cyborg, making him into one of the most powerful heroes in the Spider-Verse. Now, unfortunately, like many of the other strong alternate Spider-Men, Spider-Cyborg was immediately targeted by the villain Karn due to the threat that he posed. However, the superior Spider-Man appeared just in the nick of time and defeated the villain. Joining forces with the superior Spider army, Spider-Cyborg attempts to defeat Karn alongside the other Spider heroes, but is eventually destroyed by Deimos when the Inheritors invaded their home base on Earth 928. Now that's all we know about this Peter Parker, which is kind of disappointing because he definitely has a badass backstory, otherwise he wouldn't have so many cybernetic enhancements. If you know anything more about this character, well, let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, why not check out his first appearance in 2014 Superior Spider-Man number 33. Number 6. Spider-Side. Believing himself to be the real Peter Parker, this Spidey clone was specifically engineered by the Jackal to kill the real Peter Parker, Ben, Kane, and Mary Jane. As a clone, he possesses many of the same abilities the real Peter has, such as superhuman strength, speed, and wall crawling, and spider senses, but what really sets him apart is his complete control over his molecular structure. With this ability, Spider-Side is able to extend his limbs, shapeshift, control the density of his body, and so much more. He actually uses this to simulate the artificial webbing used by Spider-Man by turning parts of himself into semi-liquid and just flicking it around. Adopting the name Spider-Side after the Jackal jokingly said that this Peter would commit mass Spider-Side for him, he actually followed through and once released a toxin in the air that killed 2,600 people across the state of Pennsylvania. Later, Skyer removes his clone degeneration factor after he betrays the Jackal, and good thing he does because that kept him alive for a little bit longer until he eventually fell off the roof of the Daily Bugle and was put in a stasis chamber, preventing him from ever being a threat again. First appearing all the way back in 1995 as Spider-Side in New Warriors number 61. Check out this clone's short run as part of the Spider family for yourself.
Number 5. Slim. Recently, Miles Morales got his own clone saga in his series Miles Morales Spider-Man. It turned out that the Assessor had made clones of Miles after capturing and studying him. This batch of clones was unstable and after escaping were on the hunt to find a cure using any means necessary. Salim was sort of like the leader among them and he ended up at odds with Spider-Man Miles and Spider-Man Peter. Due to being raised while rapidly aging by the Assessor, Salim and his brothers were kinda messed up and kinda misguided and kinda evil. They inherently struck out at Miles and Peter when the two groups of Spider-Men crossed one another's paths. After Miles mistook their found cure for a serum to make more clones and ended up destroying it, Salim decided to kidnap Miles' baby sister, Billy, in order to lure Miles to him. With only a few hours left to live, Salim wanted to face Miles, hoping to prove that he had successfully been created to be the superior version of him, despite being otherwise unstable and defective, as so many clones have been and often are. Number 4. Kraven the Hunter. It's not just Doc Ock who's taking a swing at web slinging when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery. Kraven also once decided to step into Peter's shoes and become Spider-Man for a short time. This was during Kraven's last hunt, when Kraven seemingly had killed Peter and then took his place to prove that he was the better between the two. Kraven's approach to heroics was even more brutal in my opinion than Otto's, with many villains ending up fatally injured after Kraven attempted to get rid of them. In the end, it was revealed that Spider-Man wasn't actually dead, but had simply been given a drug to put him in a hibernation-like state after Kraven had disposed of him. Eventually, he was able to rise from the grave and return only to find out that Kraven had been making a mess of the Spider-Man mantle by adopting it in his absence. Kraven would end up basically surrendering, content with his last hunt, believing that he'd accomplished everything he had set out to do in his life. This story and Kraven's time as Spider-Man ends with him taking his own life. But don't worry, this is comics, so of course Kraven would be back.
Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Imperfect Spider-Man. In 2005, a fighting game called Marvel's Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects was released, and it didn't do all that well. But it did lead to an actually decent tie-in miniseries, written by Greg Pak and drawn by Renato Arlo. In the prequel series, we saw Spider-Man, Thing, Wolverine, and Elektra be captured and injected with a illicit substance developed by an alien scientist that corrupted them into bloodthirsty killers. Well, I mean, like, Wolverine was already halfway there, but it was the biggest change for Spider-Man. The substance turned Spider-Man and the other heroes violent and brutal, eagerly fighting in an arena in gladiatorial combat. I mean, it didn't last long before Spider-Man was able to fight off this drug and escape, leading to him fighting the rest of the Imperfects, but hey, he had been affected by this substance and he became bloodthirsty, okay? A bloodthirsty Spider-Man is pretty scary, but kinda cool.
Coming in at number 2, we have Patton Parnell, with possibly the grossest use of Spider-Man's powers ever. In a twisted alternate universe where a young man named Patton Parnell is bitten by a radioactive spider, instead of becoming a superhero, Patton becomes a complete monster. Instead of being inspired by the death of his Uncle Ben, this version of Spidey captures, webs up, and eats his cruel Uncle Ted, and even implants spider eggs within the neck of the girl he supposedly loves, Sarah Jane. All in all, Patton Parnell is a tragic horror movie villain of a character, and one we definitely don't want visiting the main Marvel universe and planting eggs anytime soon.
And finally, in number 1, the Spider. Spider was a red-headed Peter Parker, a mass murderer who merged with a spider symbiote. As a sociopath who liked hurting people, Peter had a sense of humor akin to Deadpool. In the course of his criminal career, he was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences by a jury. So basically, he's Cletus Cassidy but Peter Parker. He was drafted by the Timebreakers into Weapon X, and he replaced Daredevil after it was presumed the Timebreakers had sent him back home. When Hyperion of Earth 4023 became a member and the de facto leader of Weapon X, Spider joined him in his case to conquer multiple realities. Because of course he did. Every bad version of Peter Parker wants to conquer multiple Earths. Peter was subsequently killed by Firestar with a mega blast from her powers in 2005, but he was buried in the prison cemetery of his home reality. But Peter Parker as a Cletus Cassidy serial killer, that's absolutely terrifying.
Number 10, Spider-Man Earth 10,011. Starting off with a pretty dark one hailing from the Cancerverse. Now, what is the Cancerverse, you ask? Well, on Earth 10,011, life finally defeated death, and for some reason with such a surplus of life, being fueled by the many angled ones, this caused every living thing on Earth to be corrupted and basically turned into living corpses that will do their bidding. Now, it's a really interesting story, so check it out for yourself in 2010's Realm of Kings number 1, but anyways, let's get back to the Spider-Man. She is one of the grotesque creatures we see go head to head with the Cosmic Avengers, while when they attack Sanctuary 2. Now, we don't get to know her for very long since she is beaten to death by Ronan the Accuser shortly after her introduction, but from what we can see, I can understand why you wouldn't want her around for too long. Possessing all of the proportionate powers of a spider, such as enhanced strength, speed, stamina, and reflexes, this Spider-Man also possesses spider-like fangs, arms, and a lower half, which they bring to the table, basically making them the spider equivalent of a centaur. So yeah, I really wouldn't want that charging at me at full speed. Check her out for yourself in her first and last appearance in 2010's Thanos Imperative number 4. Number 9, Webman. Now, another one-off Spidey variant with not the most clever name in my opinion, but hey, who am I to judge? Webman is basically Spider-Man's evil mirror twin introduced to us when Spider-Man entered a room through a window and started looking at his reflection in a mirror. Now, what he didn't realize is that it was actually a one-way mirror, and on the other side was Dr. Doom, who jumped at the chance to use his twin machine to create a copy of Spider-Man. With all the powers of our friendly neighborhood hero, you would assume that this evil clone would be a formidable foe. However, he was created with the opposite traits of Peter, meaning he was actually quite stupid, and was not able to complete the task given to him by Dr. Doom. Realizing this, Doom attempts to create another clone of Peter, but his twin machine is destroyed before he could complete the task, and this led to his arrest. Now, it's actually unknown where Webman ended up. He could actually still be out there somewhere, probably trying to find his way out of a wet paper bag or something, I don't know. Either way, why not check out Webman for yourself in his first and supposedly last appearance in 1977's Spidey Super Stories number 25. Number 8, Blood Spider. Alongside Joe Emberlin, aka Jagged Bow, and Timothy Carlskin, aka Death Shield, Michael Bingham was taken under Taskmaster's wing and trained to mimic Spider-Man in order to one day kill him. Although Michael possesses somewhat primitive tech compared to Peter, such as his web shooters that are attached to a backpack-like fluid holder, he is still not someone you want to mess with. Since he was handpicked by the Taskmaster to be Spider-Man's match, he was trained in the fighting style of Spider-Man, and it can be assumed that his powers were a close match to those of Spider-Man himself before he was even picked. Now, not a whole lot is known about how he obtained his powers, but Blood Spider has demonstrated superhuman reflexes and strength in many fights over the years. He's able to smash his fist into a wall without flinching, dodge bullets, and he has the ability to cling to walls like our wise-cracking webhead, but it's not known if that is through artificial or natural means. Created by Jerry Bingham and also named after him, take a look at his character for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Amazing Spider-Man number 367. Number 7. Scarlet Spider. The Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker, Kane Parker was initially thought to be a success, but later degenerated and became mentally unstable. Discarded by the Jackal but allowed to live, Kane left and soon realized that his degeneration had actually amplified his powers and made him stronger than Peter. Able to lift up to approximately 60 tons, Kane also outclasses Peter with his super speed, stamina, and Mark of Kane, which is an ability he has that allows him to severely burn someone through skin-to-skin contact. Kane's major introduction into the Spidey world was during the Clone Saga, where he was tricked into believing the real Peter Parker was actually the clone, and he was determined to eliminate Ben Reilly, the actual clone, so his quote-unquote clone could live the life he wasn't able to have thanks to the degeneration of his body and mind. Now that's all I'm going to say about the storyline because he does have to do some pretty twisted things, and I genuinely think you guys should all read it for yourselves. Since then, Kane has toned down his evil intentions and has used his powers for good, going as far as dying during the fight with Deimos as a member of the Spider Army, but that didn't last for too long because he does eventually come back to life. Now obviously there is so much more I could talk about when it comes to this character. He is such a great one and there are so many layers to him. It was so difficult to condense it all down. So if you want to know more, let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to Kane Parker. But for now though, check him out in his first appearance in 1994's Web of Spider-Man number 119. Number 6. Spider Carnage. Just so you all know, I'm going to be talking about the Spider Carnage that we see in 1998's Spider-Wars arc in the Spider-Man animated series. Ben Reilly, also known as Scarlet Spider, but not to be confused with Kane Parker, was a successfully cloned Spider-Man created by Miles Warren. Hating that there was a double of him out there, Ben bonded with the Carnage symbiote, creating the terrifying and powerful creature known as Spider Carnage. With all the powers and abilities of both Spider-Man and Carnage, Ben devastated New York and intended to wipe out pretty much all of reality, but thankfully he was somewhat stopped by the Spider-Man of different realities. Traveling to another dimension to try and unfold his plan there, he gains the support of that world's Kingpin, but is eventually attacked by one of the various Spider-Men once again. Our friendly Spidey realizes somehow that Ben is not truly evil, he's just confused and hurt since both his Aunt May and Uncle Ben are gone. So he enlists the help of Earth's 31,198's Uncle Ben, who is able to appeal to the Peter within and calm down the beast. This unfortunately was not enough to unbind him from the symbiote though, and Ben Reilly decided to jump into an unbalanced portal, ultimately vaporizing both him and the symbiote. Now even though this is an older storyline from the show, I highly recommend you check it out for yourself because it still holds up, trust me. So check out Season 5, Episode 12 and 13 of Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Halfway through and at number 5, Man-Spider. Man-Spider is the mutated form of Spider-Man which appeared in both the comics and the 1990s animated series, with his original appearance actually coming from the animated series. In the 90s cartoon, Spider-Man's transformation into the Man-Spider was not caused deliberately like it was in the comics, but as a result of his body mutating further from the original spider bite that gave him his powers. After his attempts to ask Professor X and the X-Men for help developing a cure meet with failure, Spider-Man turned to his friend Dr. Mariah Crawford for aid. Unfortunately, his initial attempt to cure himself resulted in him accelerating the actual mutation process and growing 4 new arms. The accelerated mutation subsequently caused him to mutate into the Man-Spider after fighting the Punisher and a recently mutated Michael Morbius. The mutated Spider-Man retained some of his memories and his emotional responses to seeing loved ones or people who reminded him of his loved ones but could not communicate with them. Eventually, during the final episode of the storyline called Neurogenic Nightmare, Dr. Connors reprogrammed devices that Vulture was using to absorb youth from other people and caused him to give Peter back his spider powers but not the mutation, resulting in the Vulture mutating into Man-Spider, although somehow he had gotten rid of this mutation off screen later in the series. It's also worth noting that the introduction of Man-Spider in the comics, which was thanks to this animated series, is actually what introduced the biological web shooters from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man into the comics as well. And at 4, Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man. Also being introduced in the Spider-Man animated series in the 1990s like the Man-Spider from last number, this version of Peter Parker shared most of his early life with his superhero counterpart. However, the difference between these two was that Aunt May at some point died as well, being buried next to Uncle Ben. Thanks to some messing around with interdimensional portals by Jonathan Ohm, a version of a Carnage symbiote from another universe sensed this Peter's anger and latched onto him, turning him into the Spider Carnage, a version of Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, if you couldn't tell. A villain set on revenge and the destruction of all realities. Spider Carnage is one of the coolest iterations iterations of Spider-Man to date in my opinion, and it's part of the reason I love the 90s cartoon so much. I watch it all the way through just so I can see Spider-Carnage at the end. And while there is a version from the comics just called the Spider, which is Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, this version wanted to destroy literally everything, so yes please, this is certainly the scarier of the two, just saying. Sorry comic lovers, okay? Look, I like the comics too, but Spider-Carnage is definitely worse than the Spider. Getting close to the end at number 3, Patient Zero Spider-Man. After the Punisher accidentally released Survivor 118, a chemical designed to help people adapt to a post-apocalyptic environment, Spider-Man was the first to show symptoms from it after he ate the rhino during a hockey game. The Fantastic Four subdued him shortly afterwards and put him in a cage for experimentation, but Ben Grimm also succumbed to the plague himself and freed Spider-Man from captivity, though the exact reason why he did that is unknown. As he escapes into the city, he briefly fought Wolverine and the Punisher, but soon the world would start to fall apart, and heroes and villains alike would become cannibals, eventually leaving the Punisher as the only hero left to fight them. A turf war erupted among the emerging tribes of cannibals, due in part to the King of Death's manipulations in an attempt to thin the herd, but Spider-Man, now referred to as Patient Zero, was the most successful, and took control of all of Manhattan for his own tribe, while the others left to stake new lands. They had to conquer other places. Especially given the recent world issues though, I think that this is certainly something that I can say a good majority of people are afraid of. Although I bet that there are some survivors on this earth that say Survivor 118, that the Survivor 118 plague is fake. Calling it. Penultimately, in at number 2, Wolf Spider. At an unknown time in this universe, Wolf Spider gained spider-like powers, but unlike most other realities Peter Parker, he became a villain, remorselessly killing this universe's Miles Morales and everyone who stood for heroism and responsibility. Because, you know, we're bad guys, it's what we do. First appearing in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon in Season 4, Episode 16, this guy isn't even the villain of just one world. After finding a shard of the Siege Perilous, he traveled through dimensions to find the rest. One of these dimensions was Blood Spider's homeworld, where he allied himself with the Lizard King. After turning almost everyone into vampires, which is weird because I mean it was called the Lizard King, well, wouldn't you want to turn them into lizards, but whatever. He and the Lizard King hatched a plan to block out the sun so that vampires could just roam free on the earth. And this sounds very Dawnguard Volkihar clan to me. Okay, Peter? Like, you gonna tell me that you need to find Oriel's bow next? And like a daughter of Cold Harbor? I don't know. Skyrim. Wolf Spider, though, was cold and ruthless and obsessed with gathering the shards of Siege Perilous, and seemed to have a grudge against Spider-Man and every Miles Morales. An evil Peter Parker is always a scary thing. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Man. Peter Parker of Earth 11580 was once a promising young student, invited by Max Modal alongside his best friend Gwen Stacy to tour his Bleeding Edge company at Horizon Labs. One of the experiments the pair observed was a massive colony of spiders that Modell was bombarding with numerous radioactive particles in the name of genetic alteration. Parker, of course, fell into this colony where he seemed to be devoured, but in the process, the spiders became a singular hive mind construct that absorbed Peter's consciousness. So they started masquerading as the man they absorbed. The Hive, calling themselves Spidersman, put on the Spider-Man costume and began to fight crime in cruel York. First appearing in Spider-Gwen at number 3, I absolutely hate the idea of a whole human being made of spiders, because that's just f***ed up. Look, I'm arachnophobic except for the odd time where I need to impress someone, but it's absolutely horrific to think of any being made entirely of spiders, okay? I would actually rather die. Even if this is a good guy. No fucking way am I looking at this man and saying, oh yeah, let's let him help us. No, he can go burn with the rest of the spider species as they fucking should, okay?
Kicking off the list at number 10. Ghost Spider. Coming from Earth 11638, aka the perfect world. Okay. This Peter Parker has a much brighter beginning, meaning Uncle Ben never actually passed away and gave the whole great responsibility speech. Instead, he encourages Peter to become a stronger Spider-Man, which sounds good on paper. It sounds like the ideal world. But does he recommend protein shakes and proper exercise and nutrition? No. See, Uncle Ben pushes Peter to abduct Spider-Man from other worlds and then absorb their life force via this portal that Parker Technologies created. So he's a bit of a dick, this Uncle Ben. He's not really the nicest guy. Maybe he's fine, I don't know. This whole system seems a little bit whack. Now eventually Earth 616 Spider-Man shows up. They both hear about each other. It's interesting because Uncle Ben poisons our Peter and then he wakes up confused and they fight it out, and our Peter Parker comes out on top, luckily, with the perfect amazing spider getting his soul sucked into that machine. Now the perfect Spider-Man spirit was then trapped in the underworld like hell, and then from here it only gets more strange. Well, rather it gets more Banner. See, Banner was the current Sorcerer Supreme at this time, so he ended up freeing Peter in his astral form, but then Peter absorbed all those spirits of the damned while he was down there, so when he came back up, this perfect spider was now Ghost Spider. Number 9, Old Man Spider. Ezekiel Sims from Earth 4, aka Old Man Spider, took over the web-slinging spot after Peter Parker lost his life to Morlun. Now, Ezekiel first appeared in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 5. He was actually recruited by Spider UK, who I'll talk about a little bit later, to go against Morlun and the Inheritors. Now, Ezekiel rescued Ben Reilly and Kane from the Inheritors, which is awesome, and then a bunch of other spider beings were then recruited, but Deimos tracked them down and snapped this Spider-Man's neck. He caught him off guard. Brutal. And in his last words, he revealed his true self and told Peter to protect Silk, aka the Bride. All that matters. What a beautiful last sentence. We love impactful last words here at Top 10 Nerd. It's the best. And you know what else we like? We like when you like our videos. Literally, go and give this video a thumbs up and it will do wonders for our channel. We're trying our best, so you know, all we ask is for a little click. Maybe subscribe, maybe like, maybe notifications if you're feeling good. I don't know. Let's get back to the list. Number 8, Spider UK. Here he is, Billy Braddock himself. I told you I'd talk about him. He began his life as Captain Britain, actually, before he was webbing people up. So he's actually rocking both teams. He's a busy guy. He's on the Captain Britain team and then the Spider Army. He made his first appearance in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2 over on Earth 833. Now, this Spider-Man is one of my favorite versions. His arc is so fun. He can hop between dimensions whenever he chooses, and then after the defeat of the Inheritors, spoilers, he keeps an eye on Earth 3145, and then during the Spider-Geddon storyline, in issue 2, Spider UK dies in an explosion and is buried in England on Earth 803, the home of Lady Spider, who loved the idea of Spider UK being buried in the same cemetery as her parents because she loved him like a brother, of course. Brother zoned even after death. He's down there like, really? Okay. That's a good one. Number 7, Spider-Man. Literally, this gets a little gross. Now imagine if Spider-Man had more spider than man when he was bit. That's what happened to Patton Parnell when he first entered comics in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 4. See, Patton lived a pretty dark life. He lived with an abusive Uncle Ted. He would perform horrible experiments on animals, and he spied on his neighbor Sarah Jane. So it's not a healthy system that he's got going on here in any way, really. One day, Sarah Jane and Patton went to Alcorp Industries in hopes of freeing all these test animals, but that's when Patton saw this red radioactive spider. He was like, I want to touch it. And then he did, got bit, and then got kicked out. Now, overnight, he didn't get jacked. His vision didn't get better. He wasn't webbing up Dr. Peppers and lamps. When he got his abilities, he started eating everything. He ate a mouse, and then he ate a cat, and then when Uncle Ted walked in, he was like, what's up? Now, this version is, of course, extremely powerful, but he's also extremely dark. We love the balance. We love balance. Number 6, Spider Cyborg. Coming from Earth 2818, this version is a dark future Spider-Man. I mean, look at him, of course, there's some sort of future-ness going on here. He made his first debut in Superior Spider-Man issue 33. Now, it's Peter Parker if he got cybernetic additions. It's badass. That's basically all it is. His one eye can zoom in, go all tactical. The claws can certainly leave a mark. And one of the most remarkable features, his arm cannon, his sonic arm cannon, that's definitely a plus. Now, before Karn came to Earth 2818, our Superior Spider-Man warned him, and then when Kane finally did show up, Superior Spider-Man and some other webbed friends joined the battle. His left eye being a red lens is actually a nod to his appearance early on in the 90s in Spider-Man issue 21, titled Dealing Arms.
Number 5, Golden Sponge Cake Spider-Man. Golden Sponge Cake Spider-Man fights basically with Hostess snacks. He comes from the reality of Earth 51914, which is the reality belonging to the Hostess snack ads that you used to see in comics. I love that these ads actually have their own alternate reality and their own alternate versions of heroes, and that even within the multiverse, they have their own world and their own canon. As such, this Spider-Man usually fought against his enemies with snacks, and he usually won. Sadly, he's currently dead in the comics, having been killed by Morlun while he was on his way to a date with his reality's MJ. But hey, that doesn't mean that he needs to be dead in the animated multiverse, right? I guess Morlun was like, I am not feeling those snacks. Hostess snacks do not appease me. I only can eat spider totems. Number 4, Spiderling. Anna May Parker, or Annie Parker, is the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson Parker from Earth 18119, the Renew Your Vows reality. In this reality, Peter and MJ are still married and have little Annie. We get to see into this reality during the events of God Emperor Doom's Battle World, and in fact it became so popular that even after Battle World world was gone and done, the Renew Your Vows series continued on, and Annie also appeared in a follow-up story that continued in the pages of the limited series, Spider-Girls. Annie Parker goes by the name Spider-Ling, and like her father has spider-like powers and abilities. In fact, not just like her father, but also like her mother, because in the Renew Your Vows reality, MJ also becomes a superhero and crime fighter who goes by the name Spinneret, and is also obviously spider-themed. Number 3. Patton Parnell. Patton Parnell has to be one of the most evil incarnations of Spider-Man around. He's evil to the core. He literally becomes a Spider-Man, turning into a spider-like human hybrid after he is bit by a radioactive spider. Patton was also kind of always a creepy kid, likely as a result of mistreatment that he suffered at the mercy of his Uncle Ted. He had a crush on his next-door neighbor, Sarah Jane, and enjoyed disturbing scientific pursuits such as burning ants with a magnifying glass. What fun. When he transformed into Spider-Man, he became more confident in himself, but also acquired a taste for live animal and human flesh. He also was capable of laying eggs, as Uncle Ted would horrifyingly and personally find out after young Patton took revenge on him. That's all I'll say about that, but we might be showing you a scary panel of that right now. I'm not sure what the editor's doing in this video, but cue scary panel of Ted having spiders coming out of him. Ugh. Number 2. The Spider. This is a version of Peter Parker who also merged with the Carnage symbiote, and was possibly driven criminally insane by it. Or was criminally insane to begin with in this reality perhaps. This version of Peter hails from the reality of Earth 15. Not much is known about his home reality, mainly what we know of it involved Peter's own history. This alternate version of the character bonded with the alien symbiote that is often referred to as Carnage on Earth 616. He became an infamous mass murderer who apparently enjoys hurting people. He made his first appearance in The Exiles in issue number 12, where he showed up with a team of other heroes who were drafted into a multiversal version of Weapon X. I mean, they are heroes there, but they also kinda shady, you know? I mean, not all of them are, but definitely Spider is. Number 1. Wolf Spider. Wolf Spider comes from the animated show Ultimate Spider-Man. He was an alternate version of Peter Parker who hailed from the reality of Earth 16827 and was bad to the bone. Unlike many other alternate versions of Spider-Man, for some reason Wolf Spider became a villain instead of a hero when his spider-like powers manifested. He was a merciless killer, fighting to oppose anyone who fought on the side of good, was a hero, or believed in the ideal of responsibility. He even ended up killing his own reality's version of Miles Morales. And if that doesn't make you evil, I don't know what is, because Miles Morales is the best, and he's such a sweetheart. How dare you do that, Wolf Spider? I can't abide. Who are some of your favorite most villainous Spider-Men? Which alternate Spideys do you think are the most evil, and why? Number 10. Lady Spider. Lady Spider is an alternate version of Spider-Man who hails from the Earth of 803. She was first introduced in Spider-Verse issue number 1 from 2014. Earth 803 is similar to our own history's turn of the century or Victorian period. Here, May Riley, aka Lady Spider, was the daughter of an accomplished inventor with a passion for various animals and insects. After her father's death, May decided to become a hero and created for herself a mechanical suit and web shooters, taking up the mantle of Lady Spider. She does not have any powers, but is considered to be a spider totem and is able to fight against villains on her Earth using her suit and her equipment. I also just love her overall look, it's so cool. Number 9. Spider Bite. Spider Bite comes to us from A Vault of Spiders issue number 1 from 2018. Her real name is Margot, and she takes up the hero persona of Spider Bite in secret while immersed in cyberspace, a virtual reality world that humans, I assume in the future, frequent on a regular basis. It's like the internet, but if you could walk around in it and actually, like tap into it, experiencing it with a virtual avatar that is meant to represent you as opposed to just surfing it on your computer. It kind of reminds me of that episode of Adventure Time where they find that island full of people who are basically fed through tubes and plugged into a virtual reality Matrix-like world where they live out their day-to-day through virtual avatars that they can customize. I don't know if you've seen that episode, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty trippy. We haven't seen much of Spider-Bite yet in the comics, with her only appearing in 2 issues, but I really do hope we get to see more of her and her alternate futuristic world of Earth 22191. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list as much as I am loving giving it to you, please be sure to show us that love by giving this video a thumbs up. We also have a really awesome Spider-Man playlist, so if you have a hankering for Spider-Mans or Spider-Ladies, be sure to check that out. Spider folks, Spider totems. Number 8. Spider-Girl. Anya Corazon got her powers through a spider tattoo after she was considered a powerful potential candidate for the Spider Society by one of their sorcerers, Miguel. The Spider Society is a secret society that has existed since 1099 AD. They worship and often seek to protect spider totems, those who are fated to become superpowered spider-like beings. That's what a spider totem is. Ezekiel Sims also belongs to the Spider Society, for example. Miguel believed that Anya had what it took to become one of their hunters, warriors who fought against the Sisterhood of the Wasp. Anya ended up getting caught in the midst of a fight looking to protect a stranger who happened to be the sorcerer Miguel. To save her life and seeing her potential, he transferred some of his power to her, giving her that spider tattoo as well as spider-like powers along with it. Number 7. SP//DR, or as I like to say, Spider. aka Penny Parker. You might recognize Penny from the first Into the Spider-Verse film. She was introduced there as a young girl who inherited her father's spider-like mech suit, SP//DR, Spider, after he died. As the suit was made based on her father's genetics, it was believed that Penny was the only one to carry on his work with the mech. She allowed the radioactive spider connected to the suit's CPU to bite her so that she could bond with and control the suit alongside it. Penny was created by Gerard Way and Jake Wyatt and made her first appearance in 2014 in Edge of the Spider-Verse issue number 5, before showing up in the film 4 years later in 2018. Number 6. Spider-Man. Spider-Man has to be one of my favorite all-time alternate characters in the history of Marvel. I just love that she became a full-fledged hero in her own right, and that she helped to defeat the Inheritors the second time around while also deciding to raise all of the then-made baby versions of them. If anyone could make sure they grow up to be good and kind instead of murderous spider totem devouring villains, it's Aunt May. Spider-Man hails from Earth 3123 and comes from What If issue number 23 originally, where we asked the question what would happen if Aunt May had been bitten by a radioactive spider in the place of her nephew Peter Parker. And to be clear, that is What If issue 23 from the 1977 series, not 89, if you're looking for it.
Number 5. Peter Parker, Earth 70,237. Many years into the future, we get a glimpse into the life of a retired Spider-Man who now spends his days working in a flower shop. MJ has already passed away due to radioactivity from what I guess I'll refer to as Peter's lovin'. You probably all know what I'm talking about, and there are actually no more heroes or villains around as a new merciless police force known as the Rammed control the city. J. Jonah Jameson of all people is actually the one to convince Peter to take up the mantle of Spider-Man once again to free the city from the Rammed. However, this has proven to be a very difficult task, as Mayor Waters does whatever he can to stand in his way. Facing off against the elderly Sinister Six, Peter learns to conquer his demons and truly begins his triumphant return as the friendly webhead. As he is a bit older than most Spider-Men, his reflexes are a little bit rusty and he is more vulnerable to attacks despite having his superhuman durability. After an all-out battle with Rain and Venom, who turned out to be Mayor Waters' assistant, Peter comes out victorious and the world goes back to the way it should be, full of heroes and villains. This version of Peter doesn't get to enjoy the return of heroes for long as he is murdered by Deimos, having his head crushed by Mary Jane's tombstone. If you're interested, check out this alternate Spider-Man in 2007's Spider-Man Reign number 1. Number 4. Web Slinger. Originating from Earth, spelled E-U-R-T-H, there was once a young boy who was fascinated by spiders, and as a young man, he dared the journey into the mysterious Web Wood, a place filled with mysterious beings, to meet the mysterious Widow of the Web because he really just wanted to know more about spiders. Impressed by him, she used her magical abilities to give him all the powers of the Spider Kingdom with one condition attached. He could never use the powers for his own interest. Now, these powers weren't really too much to write home about considering spiders don't have too much going on for them. He really just gained extra limbs and web generating abilities. Not long after, his uncle was in trouble and the boy ended up using his powers to save him, which really angered the widow, causing her to curse the boy. From that day forward, he lived out his life as a monstrous looking spider-human hybrid. Deciding to isolate himself from society, the boy took up the name Web Slinger and became the guardian of Webwood. However, despite all the good he does as Web Slinger, he is still seen as no better than the criminals he fights due to his monstrous appearance. Give his story a read for yourself in 2000's Avatar: Covenant of the Shield number 2. Number 3, we have Spider-Man Noir. Raised by his Aunt May and Uncle Ben during the Great Depression, this Peter was raised to believe that good could triumph over evil no matter what. Now, gaining his powers after an antique spider statue breaks open and he is bit by a horde of spiders, he awakens the next day with these arachnid-like abilities, such as being able to shoot organic webs from his wrists, spider senses, and of course the signature superhuman abilities of every Spider-Man. Equipped with the signature Spider-Man noir suit modeled after his uncle's World War I airman uniform, Peter stealthily moves about in the shadows, taking down baddies with his spider powers and revolvers. This Peter is pretty interesting because in the beginning of his career he seemed to have no problem killing villains, killing the Vulture before he could murder his Aunt May. But later on he seemed to grow conscious and instead relied more on his powers than on his firepower. As a member of the Superior Spider Army, we saw him stationed on Earth 928, and he was a fairly key member of the war until he was very badly injured by Bricks and Bora and had to kind of sit the rest of it out and do whatever he could from behind the scenes. Outside of that storyline, we have seen him fight the likes of his Earth's Norman Osborn and the Chameleon, and we even got to see him in the animated movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where he was voiced by Nicolas Cage. Now, if you're wondering why I included him on this list today since he doesn't really have a dark attitude to the world, here's why. My reasoning is because he literally grew up during the Great Depression, one of the darkest times in human history, and had to deal with some pretty dark subject matter while fighting the urge to succumb to it. So I highly recommend you check out Spider-Man Noir for yourself in his first appearance in 2009, Spider-Man Noir #1. Coming in at number 2, we have Last Stand Spider-Man. Now, this version of Spider-Man is a possible future Peter Parker that we get to see thanks to Madam Web. In this future, Peter kills Kraven the Hunter to avenge the deaths of Kane and Mattie Franklin, and this sort of flips some switch in Peter because from that point on, he was much darker and deadlier. Adopting a new costume and title as an anti-hero, this version of Spider-Man is kicked out of the Avengers for good and winds up hurting his loved ones so badly, leaving him all alone with no one to worry about. All of his quote-unquote heroic deeds do eventually catch the attention of the police, and he goes on the run as a fugitive. Years later, as an old man, Peter visited his Aunt May's grave, aware that his younger self was actually hiding in the shadows watching his every move. Peter was confronted by the NYPD, and though he was given the choice to surrender and admit to his crimes, he refused and fought against them until he was shot down and killed. Now, I know we've talked about darker versions of Peter that are okay with killing and whatnot, but what sets Last Stand apart is that he seems he eventually realized what he was doing was probably not the best, and he felt the only way to atone for his sins was to actually die. Now, I highly recommend you check the story out for yourself because it is a great read, so head on over to 2003's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 58. And finally, number 1, we have Peter Parker Earth 8351. Known as Assassin Spider-Man, this universe's Peter Parker becomes an assassin working alongside Wolverine. Leaving basically all aspects of his old life behind, including his longtime girlfriend Mary Jane, this Spider-Man is the complete inverse of his 616 counterpart. We later find out during the events of Edge of the Spider-Verse that Peter left his old life behind to protect his loved ones, as he states that with great power comes great responsibility and even greater enemies. Shown to be always serious, lacking his signature quips and jokey demeanor in battle, likely because he has no problem coping with the situation like his mainstream counterpart, this Spidey has shown no qualms about killing and does whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, this is likely due to his friendship with Wolverine, having adapted to his personality to better fit their job style. Having received formal training to hone his skills, this Peter possesses highly refined versions of the Spidey powers we all know and love. The most impressive being his spider senses, which is honed so much that he just seems to know things, even to the point that he knows what's going on before his opponent can think about it. So, beating him is nearly impossible to do thanks to this precognition. He's also a master at hand-to-hand combat, able to defeat Black Widow with ease, and a master marksman, able to use any gun he gets his hands on. Added as a member of the Superior Spider-Man's Superior Spider Army, he alongside the other Spider-Men of the multiverse take on Karn. However, he is unfortunately defeated by the likes of Deimos' clone. Appearing for the first time in 2008's What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine #1, why not check this cold webhead out for yourself?
Number 10, 1602 Spider-Man. In part 1 of this list, we mentioned Spider-Man 2099, so for part 2, we had to wind it back a little bit. Peter Parquois, fancy name, first appeared in Marvel 1602 issue 1, but it wasn't until a couple years later in New World issue 4 where he was introduced as the Spider. Peter Parquois didn't have any powers per se, but he still got the job done for Fury. Sorry, Royal Spy Master Nicholas Fury, that is. Now, I love this version of Pete quite a bit because there's these odd looking spiders that you're expecting that are going to bite him, and then he's going to turn into the webhead, but it just doesn't happen. It gets so close, and then he's like, I'm a normal guy. It's great, it teases you, it's so fun. So this Spider-Man is, yes, of course, a little bit weaker than our 616 webhead, but I'll give him bonus points because of the ruffles. And also, no goggles either. This dude's eyes must must be so dry. Number 9, Spider-Man Noir. Bumping the clocks ahead to the year 1933, the Great Depression doesn't seem like an appropriate time to do backflips and webbing people up, but the 2008 4-part miniseries finds one of the coolest versions of Peter Parker for sure. Nicolas Cage voiced this version of Spidey in Sony's Spider-Verse film, and I gotta say, they kind of nailed it. His origins are more or less the same. Norman Osborn is a shady mayor this time around, and the way Spider-Man fights crime is so extra, I gotta admit. When I read Noir, I always read Spider-Man's voice in the same voice as like Jackie Earle Haley's Rorschach. I don't know, it's so fitting and smoky, it's definitely a vibe, that's for sure. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be extremely helpful for our channel. You're the best, thank you so much for your support. Let's get right back to this list, shall we? Number 8. Arachnite. Coming at you live from Warp World, one of the most out there versions of Peter Parker hit the page in Infinity Wars issue 3. Moon Knight and Spider-Man are gearing up. They're making a game plan to take down Gamora, and Spider-Man says, just punch whoever I punch in a second. Awesome, great deal. Now that turns out to be a lot harder than imagined when the both of them merge together. Alongside Arachnite, we got to meet Ghost Panther, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and more. Now Peter's mind was also separated into 4 different personalities like Moon Knight, each desiring dominance of his body. So there's Science Pete, the Knight, of course, the friendly neighborhood Arachnid, and for when it comes to signing those checks, CEO Peter. A combination of darts and webs ought to get the job done as well. Number 7. Spider-Kid. Making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, Earth 218 Peter's childhood is actually a little darker, believe it or not. Both of his parents passed away in a car crash tragically, and Uncle Ben was much more different after that. He was a mean old man. He was abusive to Peter, so much so that Peter actually scrapped the family name. He started going by Charlie Parker. Charlie was a troubled kid naturally. It wasn't his fault at all, but he had to spend 2 years at the Administration for Child Services and then 2 more years at Horizon Juvenile Detention Center. Now his powers didn't arrive until he was 13 after that, and then he had to bust dealers just to get by. Charlie was recruited into the Superior Spider Army by Ashley Barton, who would call Charlie Grandpa, because of the resemblance of her grandfather Pete from her reality. I love Grandpa Pete's style. The exposed arms, gotta admit, pretty badass. Number 6, spiders, man. And now on to something a little more, I don't know, disgusting, perhaps? Spider-Man of Earth 11580 is actually Spider's man. He's made of 1,000 spiders that work together, hive mind status. So gross. See, before the incident, Peter and Gwen were visiting Horizon Labs, and instead of one spider coming down, taking a bite of Peter, he actually fell into a pit of radioactive spiders where they consumed him. But he didn't go. See, his consciousness was actually spread out within all of these thousands of spiders. So much worse, way worse, I would say. Even on the cover of Spider-Gwen issue 3, it grosses me out. You see all of them and they're great, all the different alternate Spider-Mans, and then you see him and his mask is ripped, there's spiders coming out. Like, no, I don't want your help. I want anybody's help but you. Go away. He's actually quite similar to Carl King, who came around in comics much earlier with Spider-Man's Tangled Web issue 1. Only he was a bully in Peter's class who was obsessed with getting the same powers as Spider-Man, so he ate the dead spider that initially bit Peter and then ended up in a similar conundrum. I'd rather eat the spider than be consumed by thousands of them. Everybody's turning into spiders like it's a fun thing. That's a hard pass. I'd rather just not have superpowers.
Number 5. Poison. Peter Parker from Earth 70,134 has a similar history to his 616 counterpart up until his second battle with Morlun. And now hanging from a cocoon under the Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be reborn by the other. However, he actually rejected the power by ripping off its head and killing it. This was a pretty bad idea because this left his metamorphosis / resurrection incomplete. Lucky for him though, the Venom symbiote sensed this somehow and left Mac Gargan to merge with Peter. Although he fought against the symbiote for months on end, Peter eventually succumbed to it and allowed it to destroy his psyche and completely take over. Believing that his new form was a gift that should be shared, he tried to have it bond with Mary Jane, who obviously refused, and soon after both Wolverine and Luke Cage attempted to take him down, but failed because Poison is way too strong. He literally has all the powers of Peter Parker and Venom. Skip ahead a little bit and we see him try to convince MJ once again to accept his quote-unquote gift, and she says no again for obvious reasons and somehow convinces him to leave. So even though Peter had completely lost himself to the symbiote, he still showed some self-restraint, making him not the worst dark alternate, I guess. Yet another one-off dark Spidey. Check out this Earth's Peter for yourself in 2007's What If Spider-Man the Other number 1. Number 4, Spiders Man. Yep, you heard me right, Spider-Man. Once a promising young student at Horizon University, Peter of Earth 11,580 gained his powers after he fell into a massive colony of genetically altered spiders. Assumed to be dead because it looked like the spiders completely devoured him, in reality the spiders had actually just absorbed his consciousness and started to act as a single hive mind, dubbing itself Spider-Man. The name kind of makes sense now, right? Yeah. This Peter played a decent role in the Spider-Geddon storyline, as both he and Spider-Norman are recruited into the superior spider army and both decide to eventually leave the group. They end up being teleported to the Web of Life and Destiny, and while Spider-Man is feasting on Carnes' corpse, Norman decides to destroy the web, but not before Spider-Man sends a bunch of his spiders across the multiverse to spy on all the other Spideys out there. With powers similar to Carl King, aka the Thousand, this creepy crawly alternate Spider-Man is not one that I would want to go toe to toe with. Having first appeared in 2019 Spider-Geddon number 3, why not check him out for yourself and let me know what you think of him in the comments below. Number 3, we have Masked Marvel. In 2018's What If the Punisher number 1, we are given a glimpse of what it would be like if Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but also the Punisher. Peter of this Earth, or 71,928, has a pretty much identical origin story to his 616 counterpart, until he decided to kill the burglar that killed his Uncle Ben rather than leave his fate in the hands of the police. From that point on, he decided that as Spider-Man, he would do anything necessary when it came to fighting crime, even keeping the gun that killed his Uncle Ben on him at all times, as a reminder of what had been taken from him and what he had to do to keep everyone in his life safe. With all the same powers of our familiar 616 webhead, this Spidey fights crime under the name of the Masked Marvel. Although he tried to avoid using the gun at all costs, this Peter had no issue pulling it out and killing someone if it was for the greater good. An excellent example of this is when the Sinister Six kidnapped his Aunt May and Betty Brant, and he had no other choice but to engineer weapons specifically designed to take out each member of the Six. Now eventually Peter meets Gwen Stacy and falls in love, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the Green Goblin, which once again forces him to create a weapon specifically designed to kill the villain. After this though, he actually retires his suit, reveals his identity to Gwen, and they get married and live a very peaceful life together. Kind of a nice way to end, don't you think? Why not give his story a read for yourself and let me know what you think. Number 2, Brian Cornfield. Born and raised in New York City of Earth 616, Brian Cornfield was a huge Spider-Man fan and wanted nothing more than to get in contact with him. However, after his mother was mugged and killed, his motives changed and he wanted revenge on not only the killer, but Spider-Man for not saving her. After coming in contact with Dwarf, he was granted powers similar to Spider-Man and became Spider-X. What sets him apart from our regular old Spider-Man is that Brian is not very easy on the eyes, as he possesses 4 extra spider-like limbs coming out of his waist and upper back. And he also has razor-sharp fangs capable of tearing someone to shreds. After hunting down and killing his mother's killer, he began taking out as many criminals as possible because he truly believed he was created to bring justice to the world. Fast forward a little bit and we see Spider-X fighting his last battle against the mutant Paralyzer, who was trying to recreate Zax, and he ended up succeeding. In the fight against Zax, all the heroes present came together and defeated the giant electrical being, but the explosion actually killed both Paralyzer and Spider-X, and unfortunately, we haven't seen either of them again since. Check out Brian Cornfield for yourself in his first and last appearance as Spider-X in 1993's Midnight Suns Unlimited number 3. And number 1, Arachnite. In the Warp World storyline that follows the life of Peter Parker, who lives in a pocket dimension where history was rewritten, we see Peter's Aunt May and Uncle Ben get murdered by the Goblin by night on their way back from the American Museum of Natural History. Critically injured, Peter gets bitten by a mystical spider and is linked to the totem energy of ancient spiders, granting him his signature Spidey powers and saving his life. However, there was a drawback. This connection shattered his mind into 4 separate personalities, and although he fought against them for most of his early life, he eventually learned to listen to them and allow them to come through whenever they were needed. These personalities are known as the Arachnid, who is the dominant aspect of Arachnite and is the most athletic persona, the Knight, who serves as Peter's aggressive side and is what keeps his crime-fighting side motivated, CEO Peter, who serves as the confident CEO of Parker Industries, and Science Peter, who is a working scientist with a strong passion for technology. Fighting crime as a member of the Defenders alongside Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and Weapon Hex, Arachnite is a true hero through and through despite going through a decent amount of hardships. Number 10, Symbiote Spider-Man. Obviously, we have to start off this list with a classic. Introduced in 1989's What If Volume 2 Number 4, we're given a glimpse into the life of Earth 1089's Peter Parker after his suit bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the symbiote couldn't be removed from Peter Parker, even though the Fantastic Four and other heroes tried using a combination of magic and science. It ended up taking over Peter's mind and body, feeding off his adrenaline, causing him to age at a very rapid rate. Once his body couldn't sustain the symbiote any longer, it used him to possess superheroes like Hulk and even caused the death of a few others. Free from the symbiote's control, it's then revealed that Peter Parker has now aged to 85 with not a whole lot of time left. He was later found dead by Mr. Fantastic, surrounded by research on how to kill the symbiote that he was once bonded to. Although it was out of his control, symbiote Spider-Man was considered even worse than Venom, one of the most sadistic villains in the Marvel Universe, and unfortunately he never really got that redemption. Number 9. Peter Parker, Earth 9591. Now we're all familiar with the origin story of Peter Parker, spider bite leads to powers, leads to the birth of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but have you ever wondered what it would look like if things took a bit of a different turn after that spider bite? Well, wonder no longer, because the 1995's Ruin number 2, we're actually introduced to a different Peter Parker who isn't so lucky. After being bitten by the radioactive spider, Peter develops a total of 0 powers and is instead infected with a mutant virus that ultimately leads to his death. This Earth never gets the chance to meet the hero Spider-Man, and instead they're given a rash and scar-covered Peter Parker who was forced to live the remainder of his life in quarantine so he wouldn't infect anyone else. I always wondered what would happen realistically after that spider bite, but man, I really didn't think it would be that dark. Number 8. Ghost Spider. Now, this is one of my favorite costumes in the Spider-Man PS4 game, so I had to add it to the list. On Earth 11,638, Peter's Uncle Ben wasn't ever murdered and actually helped him hone his skills as the Amazing Spider. Despite this, he doesn't always use his abilities and intellect for good, and thanks to the resources from his lab, Parker Technologies, the Amazing Spider found a way to bring over other Spider-Men from different universes and absorb their powers. After bringing Earth 616 Peter Parker into his universe, the Spider is convinced by him that what he's been doing isn't heroic at all. Then, when Ben is about to absorb Earth 616 Peter's powers, we see the Spider stand in the way and instead had his powers absorbed, putting his body into a comatose state and trapping his spirit in hell. Following the Sorcerer Supreme's fight with the Infernal Hulk, we see Peter given a second chance at life after he was infused with the spirits and powers of the repentant damned. Now possessing powers similar to Ghost Rider along with his Spidey powers, he awakes from his coma as the Ghost Spider and uses his second chance to correct some of the mistakes he's made already. Check him out in his first appearance in 2011's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 38. Number 7. Superior Spider-Man. Following an insane life that deserves a read if you're not familiar with it already, Otto Octavius transplanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, leaving Peter in his body. Still retaining Peter's memories, he was able to trick all of Peter's loved ones into thinking nothing was wrong. Otto believed that he could be a better Spider-Man and, following the death of Peter Parker, took up the role as the Superior Spider-Man, upgrading the spider suit to better fit his needs. Many battles ensued, and then it's revealed along the way that Peter's consciousness still lived on inside his body, and after the Goblin King kidnapped Anna Maria, Otto's love interest while in Peter's body, Otto begins to hesitate to save others as he has a chance to save her and doubts he can save everyone without having time to plan. Peter's consciousness pushes him to save the child who is also in danger at the same time, and Otto realizes that Peter is more deserving of the role of Spider-Man and completely erases his consciousness so that Peter can take control of his body once more and save everyone. He sacrificed himself for the girl he loved and the man he hated for the greater good, and that just goes to show you that even if you start off as a villain, you can change and become a hero. Now there's a lot more to the story that I had to gloss over or skip, so I highly recommend you check out the story for yourself, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man number 697. Number 6. Doppelganger. The evil, pretty much mindless duplicate of Spider-Man from Earth 616, this version of Spider-Man was created by Magus during the Infinity War. Although he was killed during the Infinity War, this 6-armed Spidey clone was later revived by the Demogoblin, becoming its pet for a while. Doppelganger appears a few more times after the aftermath of the Infinity War, teaming up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and the Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and then is later seen as part of the Spider Army to help defeat Morlun and the other inheritors. Unfortunately for him, after many adventures, the Doppelganger was eventually captured and imprisoned in the rebuilt Ravencroft. Possessing many of the same powers as the original Spider-Man, what really sets Doppelganger apart is his raw strength, being able to lift up to 25 tons as opposed to the normal 10 that most other Spider heroes can lift. Why not check him out for yourself in Infinity War number 1.
Number 10. Savage Spider-Man. This Spider-Man hails from Savage Land. When he was just a child, he and his parents flew over Savage Land when their plane exploded. Although his parents were killed, young Peter Parker survived. He landed in a nest of giant spiders who raised him as their own, building up his immunity to their spider venom by biting him. That's what happened. Peter Parkerman would grow up to become Savage Spider-Man, a guardian of the Savage Land, who would later be recruited to join the multiversal Spider Army in the fight against the Inheritors. Savage Spider Spider-Man has his origins explained and was first introduced in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Vault of Spiders. Number 9. The Other Old Man Spider-Man. The other one. We've already talked about the senile old Spider-Man who basically goes insane in his old age and is severely depressed due to the city being overrun with corrupt politicians and criminals and due to losing Mary Jane and how that happened or why that happened. But we haven't yet talked about the old, seemingly immortal Spider-Man from Earth 18236. This version of the character is so old he doesn't even remember how long he's lived in the retirement home he now finds himself in. His life was extended after he received a blood transfusion from Deadpool, and in this alternate reality he is confined to a wheelchair while remaining impressively dexterous and strong. The old man Deadpool of this reality ends up in the same retirement home and the two team up together. I don't know about you, but I think a reality where Spider-Man is forced to team up with Deadpool, possibly forever because he can now live so long, is a pretty dark one, at least from Peter's perspective. You can find this version of Spider-Man and this version of Deadpool in their team-up series, Spider-Man/Deadpool in issue 26. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to click like, click, and do the other things too, like comment, subscribe, you know, all the things. Thank you. Number 8. Web Slinger. The Web Slinger is an alternate version of Spider-Man who was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man in 2014 in issue number 9, but we later learn more of his origins in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Here we discover how Patrick O'Hara and his horse Widow got their spider-like abilities. A spider that had become exposed to an elixir bit both of them one day, granting them miraculous abilities. This elixir had been made by Patrick's colleague Dr. Michael Morbius, who made and sold elixirs and participated in a traveling show along with the gunslinger. However, Morbius was transformed into a vampire when he himself consumed the elixir and began to feed on human children. Patrick was forced to confront Morbius, who sacrificed himself in a laboratory explosion, rushing towards it instead of away to make sure that the people would be safe from him forever. Tragic. Number 7. Mayhem. Mayhem is an alternate version of another alternate version of Spider-Man. It's a lot of alternates on alternates. The alternate version they're an alternate of is Spider-Girl of the Earth 982 reality, aka MC2. Mayhem is April Parker, the clone of May Parker, Spider-Man and Mary Jane's daughter. April was initially antagonistic when she awoke from her stasis, but was soon after brought around to the side of good and even integrated into the Parker family, becoming like a sister to May and taking the name April. At school, May explained their identical appearance by saying April was her cousin. However, April would eventually turn to the dark side once more, taking up the mantle Mayhem, after becoming jealous of May. April believed there could only be one Spider-Girl woman, Spider-Woman. Number 6. Spiders-Man, Earth X. Spiders-Man of Earth X is different from the Spiders-Man we talked about in part 3 of this series, who hailed from the Earth 11580. Spiders-Man of Earth X, or the reality of Earth 9997, is a villain who ended up joining the Skull, and used his abilities to torment the Skull's prisoners. We don't know what his life was like before, we merely know that a mutation likely caused him to turn into a lizard-like being whose skin looks similar to the pattern of Spider-Man's suit. He has illusion casting powers which allow him to cast energy webs that cause very realistic illusions, making his victims relive the most tragic moment of their lives.
Coming in at number 10, we have the android clone known as Time Spinner. Very early on in Spider-Man's career, just when he was first getting to know the Avengers, the time-traveling villain Kang the Conqueror sought to use the up-and-coming hero as a way to destroy Earth's mightiest heroes once and for all. Creating a perfect robot replica of Spider-Man known as Time Spinner, this android was able to fool the Avengers into splitting up and was able to capture them one by one, seemingly capable of all the same feats as the real Spider-Man, but with a metallic body to match. Luckily for the Avengers, the real Spider-Man eventually caught wind of Kang's plan and showed up just in time to send the robot packing. But still, an android Peter Parker that can fool even the Avengers, that's some pretty messed up stuff.
In at 9, Lizard Spider-Man. The story of the Spider Lizard has its first origins going back in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 164, when Dr. Kurt Connors creates an Enervator device to keep Spider-Man alive after Kingpin stole the web-slinger's life force using a Vita Drain machine. Subsequently, in Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, number 32, Dr. Connors experiments further with the Enervator and accidentally creates the monster known as Iguana. Connors uses the Enervator on himself in order to become the lizard and defeat Iguana, but that doesn't turn out exactly as planned, of course, because it's the friggin' lizard, and Spider-Man has to come to the rescue. All of this comes back into relevance in Spider-Man Volume 1 number 39, where Dr. Connors persuades Spider-Man to swing by his laboratory for a checkup. It is clear that Spider-Man's mood is still being negatively affected by his earlier exposures to this machine. So in that same issue, Spider-Man faces the scourge of the Schizoid Man. The mental stresses of this battle are too much for his enervated system to handle, and a terrible transformation is triggered. So Spider-Man becomes Spider-Lizard. And I think we all know why that's a scary thing.
Coming in at number 8, we have none other than the Assassin Spider-Man of Earth 8351. Over the years, Spider-Man's had many different kinds of web shooters, from homemade mechanical ones to the biological ones of the Sam Raimi films, but this is probably the only version of Spider-Man where the web shooter is literally just a gun. Yes, believe it or not, there's a Spider-Man that just shoots people instead of web slinging. Having abandoned New York in his own universe to become an international assassin alongside Wolverine following a disastrous misadventure throughout Europe, this Spider-Man has entirely given up on the great responsibility part of his mantra, only aiding the other Spider-Men against multiversal threats whenever his own reality and way of life are in danger.
Number 7. Poison. Poison is the alternate version of Peter Parker who comes from the What If version of the other story. In this version of the story, Peter abandons the spider within himself. This leaves Peter detached and vulnerable. Sensing this, the Venom symbiote leaves its then host, Matt Gargan, in pursuit of Peter Parker, who is still within his cocoon. The symbiote forcibly bonds with Peter and emerges from the cocoon as a new entity that goes by the name of Poison. Instinctively returning to Mary Jane, it then attempts to convince her to join its side, but terrified of what both the symbiote and what Peter have become, she rejects them. Ultimately, they decide to dig up the body of Gwen Stacy and make her their new partner in crime. Yikes. Poison is all around just bad news. Very, very evil. Very spooky. Not that all spooky things need to be evil, just to be clear. Number 6. Zombie Peter. This alternate version of Peter Parker hails from Earth 2149, sometimes referred to as Earth Z or the Marvel Zombieverse. In this reality, Peter did his best to hold out and avoid becoming infected, but ultimately did succumb to that after being bitten by Steve Rogers, known as Colonel America in this reality. After being bitten, Spider-Man began to transform into a zombie. Before the change overtook him, he hoped to get Aunt May and Mary Jane somewhere safe, and returned home, only to be overcome by the infection. As a result, he ended up eating both of his loved ones, unable to resist the hunger he felt deep inside himself. Spider-Man in this reality goes on to become one of the zombie Galacti, taking on the power cosmic after eating Galactus. However, in the end, he's also one of the few surviving zombies who aims to prevent the spread of the zombie plague to other universes, eventually becoming a hero once more. As so many evil Spider-Men do, they always come around in the end, even if they're a zombie.
Number 5. The Savage Spider-Man. Spider-Man, but a savage. So savage. This Peter Parker entered comics in Vault of Spiders issue 1. When a plane went down over Antarctica, Peter was the only survivor out of his family. He didn't have powers yet, he didn't swing his way to freedom, but he survived by using the last parachute. During his rough emergency landing, the wind moved him around quite a bit, and unfortunately he landed in one of the worst places on the planet, a spider's nest in Savage Land. I was just done with the spider stuff, now we're back to being itchy again. They all just bit him over and over and over again, and powers of course soon followed. The Savage Spider-Man was the new protector of Savage Land. Later on, he was recruited into the Spider Army by Ghost Spider to fight off the Inheritors back on our Earth 616. Honestly, this is a great version. I love when Wilson Fisk sees the boy growing up again. See, he was the reason the plane went down in the first place those many years ago. So when he returns to see if this Savage Spider-Man is real, he gets a little payback. Number 4. Hostess Cake Spider-Man. I think it's time we talk about one of the weirdest but yummiest versions of Spider-Man. Not only is Peter dishing out quips and flips, but he's also feeding the world too. What a hero. This version was born in an ad for Hostess Twinkies, so naturally its own Marvel universe has to exist. And also, it's fun to make it exist and to think about it. When it came down to taking on villains, Spider-Man wouldn't web them up, instead he would just huck treats at them, because that always works. Twinkies, Hostess cakes, anything, you name it. Funny enough, in Spider-Verse issue 1, the cakes are referred to as golden sponge cakes so that they don't get sued. It's also the same issue where we see the end of Golden Sponge Cake Spidey. It's sad, but if you stuck around for too long, realistically, everybody would just get fat or riddled with cavities.
Spider sense tells me this cake isn't for eating. It's for throwing!
Number 3, Superior Spider. Starting in 2013, this version is the outcome of the Dying Wish storyline when Dr. Octavius planted his mind inside Peter Parker's. Nice little swap. There we go. We see this begin in Amazing Spider-Man issue 698. Peter gets a priority call from the Avengers, and when he meets them all on the raft, Cap informs him that one of his old enemies is dying, and Peter knows that it's Doc Ock before he even tells him. Cap says that he's asking for him. Well, rather, he's asking for Peter Parker. Peter goes in and he asks everybody for a private moment, just the two of them to talk it out, right? But when they're in there for that hot second, it's revealed that they somehow have switched bodies, page 20 and 22. So Peter in Doc's body is freaking out. He's worried what the hell to do, because now he's got his powers and his families and his friends are all at risk. You gotta stay away from those brain-swapping Octobots, that's the key. I'm not going to tell you what happens because it's really enjoyable. Go check it out yourself. Number 2, Spider-Boy. Marvel and DC are powerhouses, both on page and on screen. So when the two companies combine forces, we get some pretty amazing characters like Spider-Boy. Making his first debut in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, residing on Earth 9602, Spider-Boy is an amalgam of Spider-Man and Superboy. How epic is that? Spider-Boy is a clone. Now he's a clone of Peter who was created during an accidental lab explosion. General Ross felt responsible for this explosion, so he ended up adopting the young lab lad. They were a fun duo until Ross was taken out by a mugger, so Pete then became a hero. He put together the suit, became famous almost overnight. That whole event kicked off the with great power comes great responsibility vibe. Now back when he returned to Project Cadmus, Pete was given a web pistol to help him swing around town. In this story, he doesn't have webs here, but it doesn't really matter. Because of his new superpowers, he can focus gravity inwards to make himself stronger and move faster, or he can lower gravity around himself in order to jump higher, further, and faster. He just clicks the off switch on gravity and then climbs walls. Must be nice. Guy probably kills it with wall sits. And finally, number 1, Flash, Betty, and John. For the last one on this list, we figured we'd end on a 3-in-1. What If is releasing weekly episodes on Disney Plus currently, so I have to throw it back to one of my favorite issues from Volume 1 back in the 70s. What if someone else besides Spider-Man had been bitten by the radioactive spider? Written by Don Glutt, What If Volume 1 Issue 7, we get to see Flash Thompson, Betty Brant, and John Jameson get their shot at being Spider-Man. How lucky. First, Flash gets bit, he gets the powers, and he teaches a bad driver a lesson. With his new strength, I mean, he's a little bit too harsh. The middle finger always works, but okay, rocky start, that's fine. Then he decides to take a crack at professional wrestling. He thinks it's going to be a breeze, but due to said super strength, he killed the guy instead of tapping him out. Not much of a superhero there. The Vulture ends up ending his not so hot streak, so next up we have Betty Brant. Her costume is arguably the flashiest. It makes for great photo shoots, apparently. Gotta get those likes somehow, make those superpowered TikToks. I'm here for it. But when she runs out of web fluid while striking a pose, the thief that takes Uncle Ben's life runs on by, and no one does anything about it. And finally, this issue shows us John Jameson getting his shot. While his outfit was also pretty on point, his judgment was not. John tried to stop a space shuttle from crashing and didn't live to tell the tale. Next time you feel like web swinging to work, just remember that the responsibility thing is just as important as the powers.
In a sense, Superior Spider-Man. Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter. Yet a piece of Peter still remained in his own body and didn't die in Otto's body, which ended up convincing Otto to be a hero, albeit a darker one. This small bit of Peter that was left in his body was also trying to regain control, for obvious reasons, because you know a superhero was piloting his bone mech. This small bit of Peter though was at times able to interfere or even control Otto temporarily. One of these moments came in Superior Spider-Man number 8, where there was a device that was capable of wiping Peter from Otto's brain, but to get the actual item, Otto had to perform surgery on a little girl. However, Peter didn't think that Otto was actually able to do it, so he tries to stop Otto from even performing the surgery, but he also didn't want him to get the thing that would wipe him from his brain. Also, Otto did this surgery while having his Spider-Man mask on and an additional face mask. But either way, this version of Spider-Man was definitely more ruthless and willing to kill, since he was still technically a supervillain. And at 9, Kane. The clone that would come to be known as Kane was the Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker. Initially thought to be a success, Kane eventually became deformed due to a flaw in the cloning process, and he continued to degenerate, and he was left further deformed and mentally unstable. Aren't we all? The Jackal allowed Kane to live as like a test subject to see how long he would be able to survive, and it ended up exceeding Jackal's expectations. As a result though, Kane experienced a strong feeling of rejection that might be kind of like a father-son kind of thing, you know what I mean. Kane left and realized that the degeneration that had caused his mental state to decline had also amplified his powers that he had genetically kind of inherited from Peter. His strength, speed, stamina, and agility were also comparable to those of Peter, but he also gained precognitive powers as well, which showed him flashes of the future, which seemed to be sort of an amplified spider sense. He also possessed a mark of Cain, which was a corrosive touch that he used to leave eaten away handprints on victims' faces, which is pretty damn scary if you ask me. Also, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, be sure you hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps us out against the algorithm almighty. Also, I'm dressed as Spider-Man and talking about Spider-Man, so I feel like that's worth a like. And at 8, Pestilence Spider-Man. When Apocalypse started his plans for world domination, he captured 4 people who he saw as being good enough to be his horsemen and corrupted them. Spider-Man became the horseman known as Pestilence. Pestilence was one of the horsemen that Deadpool, Cannonball, and Siren encountered in their alternate reality search for Cable. And even though Pestilence was accompanied in the fight by Famine and Archangel, all 3 of them were defeated. This version of Peter Parker has the same powers as his 616 counterpart, except this time they've been augmented by Apocalypse when he corrupted them. But I mean, like a Spider-Man who is literally a horseman of the apocalypse and asks people if they will scream while he sucks the marrow from their bones, I think it's safe to say that this guy's pretty damn scary. And he made his first appearance in 2005, which makes this character around the same age that Peter was when he got his powers, which is kind of ironic. He hails from Earth 5701, which is the age of Apocalypse Earth. And at 7, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider comes from Earth 11638, and in this reality, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben never died, and actually ended up helping Peter to train as a hero with his new spider powers, becoming the Amazing Spider, a famous and popular superhero who also became a rich and successful scientist, having his own company called Parker Technologies. With his resources and motivation from Uncle Ben, the Amazing Spider used transportation technology to bring Spider-Men from other universes to his and absorb their powers to increase his. After bringing the Spider-Man from Earth 616 to his Earth though, and making him believe that he arrived in this universe by accident, the Amazing Spider was weakened by the feedback of the dimensional portal. Eventually, the Amazing Spider was convinced that what he was doing was not in fact heroic and allowed himself to die. But after dying, the Sorcerer Supreme of Dr. Banner, infused Peter's spirit that was trapped in hell with the powers of the damned, causing him to become a form of Ghost Rider, calling himself the Ghost Spider. And honestly, this is one of the baddest spider suits of all time. I love it. If I could figure out a way to cosplay this, I would. And at 6, Zombie Spider-Man. Okay, so technically this is Spider-Man, but it's a zombie version of Spider-Man, but I'm gonna count it anyway, because this is pretty damn messed up, zombie or not. On Earth 2149, an alien plague ends up infecting all superpowered individuals and turns them into zombies. However, it's later revealed that the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead was actually what caused this plague. But after learning that the plague was really bad, since I guess the fact that they were calling it a plague wasn't enough, or the fact that the world had to shut down, so the population wasn't wiped out, Peter ran home to get Aunt May and Mary Jane the hell out of Dodge. But when he got there, we got a good old case of Parker Luck, protagonist syndrome. Boom, zombie spider. He ends up becoming a zombie as soon as he gets home and eats the 2 most important women in his life. He also fractured his jaw before becoming a zombie so he could open his mouth more, I guess. Or kind of like man spider it. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. Like even by zombie standards, it's ew.
Number 5, Astro Spider. Jumping on over to Earth 3145, making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, John Jameson was the son of Jonah Jameson. He was an astronaut for NASA, and during one trip, a spider got trapped in his suit, which already sounds like a nightmare scenario. But when the space shuttle was then hit by cosmic waves, John obtained these amazing new abilities that all merged together. Now, he didn't come home and stop bank robbers one quip at a time. See, his Earth was actually destroyed by a thermonuclear war, so Jameson was assigned to oversee the construction of a spacecraft on the Nautilus platform. He, along with 35 others, are the last of humanity. So it's a little bit different than our, usual Earth 616 scenario. John can also read minds and create webs of solid telekinetic energy. He met his fate a few issues later when he was feasted on by Verna. Sometimes being a spider totem sucks. Number 4, the Savage Spider-Man. Less space and more savage land. This Peter Parker entered comics in Vault of Spiders issue 1. When a plane went down over Antarctica, Peter was the only survivor in his family. Now, he didn't have powers just yet, but he survived using the only remaining parachute. Tragic stuff. Now, during his rough emergency landing, the wind led him to touch down in a nest of giant spiders. And then they all just bit him non-stop until he himself gained these spider abilities, and then soon he was the new protector of Savage Land. Now later on, he was recruited into the Spider Army by Ghost Spider to fight off the Inheritors back on our Earth 616. Number 3, Hostess Cake Spider-Man. I think it's time we talk about one of the craziest versions of the webhead, and perhaps one of the yummiest, I'll say. Besides Spider's Man, it's pretty yummy too. So not only is Peter dishing out quips and flips, but he's also feeding the world. This version appeared for the first time in an ad for Hostess Twinkies, so naturally its own Marvel universe had to exist to house such a reality. And also, it's fun to talk about. So when it came down to taking on these supervillains, Spider-Man wouldn't resort to violence to get the message across. Instead, he would just huck Twinkies. He would huck fruit pies, chocolate cakes, all the treats, just coming at ya. It's so yummy. And funny enough, in Spider-Verse issue 1, the cakes are referred to as golden sponge cakes, to avoid trademark issues, then they get sued. That's also the same issue where we see the end of said golden sponge cake Spidey. Short but sweet. Number 2, Superior Spider-Man. Starting in 2013, this version is the outcome of the Dying Wish storyline, where Dr. Octavius planted his mind inside Peter Parker's. That's right, the two ended up switching bodies like it's Freaky Friday, only with super abilities, but that was fun. Otto Octavius was dying, and when Peter visited, he had no idea it's actually his own deathbed that he was looking at. Let me explain. So right when Otto Octavius switched into Peter's body, he discovered what it was really like to be a hero. He understood the whole with great power comes great responsibility thing. Having retained Peter's memories as well in this new skin suit, he decides to just go for it and fight crime, but he does it in a horrible way. He's not really sure how to balance the scales of justice just yet. He was violent when it came to handling these guys. Otto even enlarged the suit's talons to cause greater pain to his victims. Like, is he Jigsaw? Who does this? He modified the nano spider tracers as well that get ejected from said talons to paralyze the victims. Green Goblin and his army attacked, and then it was then that Otto Octavius realized he wasn't meant to be the sticky hero that he wanted to be. After coming to terms with the fact that Peter's consciousness still exists inside of him, he decided to sacrifice himself, allowing Peter to become the superior Spider-Man. Number 1, Spider-Boy. Another fun amalgam making his first debut in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, residing on Earth 9602, Spider-Man mixed with DC's Superboy. I mean, I smell power. Need I say more, really? Spider-Boy is a clone. Now, he's a clone of Peter who was created during an accidental lab explosion. Now, General Ross felt responsible, so he adopted the young clone, Pete Ross and Uncle Jen. They were a fun pair until Thaddeus was taken out by a mugger. Sad stuff. So Pete now became the hero. He put together a suit, became famous almost overnight. Now, back when he returned to Project Cadmus, Pete was given a web pistol to help him swing around. And on top of that, he can increase his own personal gravity to help get things done. He can focus gravity inwards to make himself stronger and move faster, or he could lower gravity around himself in order to jump higher and further. OP, I would say you're pretty OP at that point. Number 5, the Scarlet Spider. Ben Reilly first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue 149 as a clone. He was part of the whole clone thing that went on for way too long. But it wasn't until Spider-Man issue 5 that he was introduced to readers as the Scarlet Spider. Now, the Jackal created the clone using Peter's DNA, and he was made to fight Peter, of course. He's like, hey, if you can't beat him, just clone him. Now, the two were fighting it out in order to save Ned from a bomb, and then when the clone seemingly died, he was soon buried after. But the thing is, the Jackal injected him with something earlier so he could survive something like this. Of course. So for the next 5 years, he thought of himself as the useless clone that came back to life, then gave himself the name Ben Reilly. So depressed. Perhaps one of the better elements to come from the clone saga was Ben Reilly. One of the few things. Number 4, Spider-Man 2099. Ah yes, the not so near future. 2099 Spider-Man, aka Miguel O'Hara, is the current web slinger over there, and his outfit is one of the more memorable ones. His DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA, so it's a little bit different than our spider bite scenario that we have. Now, he worked at Alchemex and was pressured by the company to test genetic coding, and after Mr. Sims didn't make one of those test runs, just went horrible, Miguel was then poisoned by Tyler Stone with a fatal drug named Rapture, so Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he couldn't quit his job. How brutal is that? It's like every McDonald's employee. It's like, hey, you want free nuggets? Sign in tomorrow. You're not going anywhere. So Miguel ended up relying on the drug so much that he tried to genetically fix himself and fix his body. Now, of course, this had a brighter turnout than expected, but Miguel inherited Spider-Man abilities plus telepathy. Must be nice. Number 3, the Spider. Earth 15 Spider-Man, simply referred to as the Spider, comes into comics during the Exile storyline issue 12. Now, he was another Cletus Cassidy pretty much. I mean, he was a red-haired psycho who had no problem taking out innocent people, so when the Spider symbiote came along on this Earth, it merged with evil Peter, who was sentenced to not 1, not 2, but 67 life sentences from a jury. Okay, so he's bad. He was a big part of the Weapon X team, and he had Deadpool's sense of humor too, which made him just that much more evil. Now in Exiles issue 44, he was finally stopped by Firestar when she hit him with a mega blast. He was later buried in the prison cemetery, so even after death, you're still doing that time. Number 2, Miles Morales. Of course we gotta talk about him. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4 just a couple months right before the death of Peter Parker. Now this is a crazy time because Norman Osborn was just arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and while Miles was visiting his Uncle Aaron, an enhanced spider crawled out of Aaron's bag, bit Miles, and Bob's your uncle. You know the rest. Now he got these amazing Spider-Man abilities, but he could also camouflage himself almost fully invisible. Plus Venom Blasts will help get the job done, that's for sure. The new PlayStation Spider-Man game is way more fun with these added abilities. Makes it way better, so I had to put them on this list and talk about them. Especially if we're talking about abilities. Hold L1 and just punch someone's chest through the wall, you're like, yeah, this is great. And finally, number 1, Cosmic Spider-Man, aka Captain Universe. This Spider-Man is one of, if not the most powerful alternate version of the Web Slinger. Cosmic Spider-Man went toe-to-toe with Rune King Thor and came out on top. So if you're not sold now, just get out of here. Actually, don't get out of here. Watch the rest of this video. Don't even say that. Never mind. Cosmic Spider-Man is from Earth 13. He retains the powers of the Enigma Force, and he first appears in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue 9. Cosmic Spider-Man can't leave his universe or else he would lose the Enigma Force. That's why the resistance of spider heroes were based in Central Park of Earth 13. They're like, hey, no sweat, we'll come to you, no problem. We don't mind the commute. He meets his demise only a couple issues later, sadly, when the Inheritors were hunting down Spider-Man and their leader Solus drained the Enigma Force from him.
Number 5, Ultimatum. Miles Morales of Earth 1610 has not been integrated into the 616 world, and because of that and because of his awesomeness, we often associate him with the main continuity, but he isn't the actual Miles of Earth 616. We have one of those, as a matter of fact, who is in fact not a hero, but instead a criminal who once worked for the Kingpin. He ended up being sent to the reality of Earth 1610, but made his way back to Earth 616 eventually. Returning, he now had knowledge of the lives people had lived in 1610 before the world was reformed as Battle World, and then was later deconstructed and returned to normal by Reed Richards. His plan was to get rid of Miles and his family, sending them back to their home reality. However, it didn't really work out when he put it into action. Still, Ultimatum could be waiting for the right moment to strike again, and also boasts of having the immensely powerful Green Goblin of Earth 1610 at his beck and call, who also came along with him to Earth 616. Number 4, the Lizard. The Lizard was originally Peter Parker in the reality of Earth 65. Peter was a friend of Gwen's and wanted nothing more than to be just like his favorite hero, Spider-Woman. He worked on a serum that would help him to become like her and also help him to stand up to the students who mistreated him, which Gwen often did for Peter whenever she noticed that he was being teased. Unfortunately, the serum did not work as Peter expected and turned him into the monster and villain known as the Lizard. A monster which Gwen, as Spider-Woman, was forced to kill, only to find out after that all along it had been her friend Peter, who'd simply turned himself into the Lizard in the first place because he wanted to be like her. Oh my goodness. It's a pretty tragic story just all around. For Gwen, for Peter, ugh. Number 3, Venom. This version of Spider-Man comes to us from what we're referring to temporarily as Earth 848. That's a temporal reality number though, so don't get too attached to it because it's probably gonna change. As implied by the name of this point, he is from the What If inspired series Spider-Man Spider Shadow, where we imagine what would have happened if Peter hadn't decided to part ways with the symbiotic black suit we've come to know as Venom, but instead decided to stay bonded to it, basically becoming Venom. Here, Spider-Man becomes a merciless anti-hero slash villain who kills his enemies, and the Sinister Six must band together in order to try and survive. Well, a version of the Sinister Six at least. He also sports a pretty sweet beard here. Beards make you dark and edgy. right? I don't know, I've never had one, so let me know. Number 2, black suit Mr. Fantastic. If you thought Peter Parker keeping the black suit was a bad idea, wait till you see who else gets their hands on it on Earth TRN 848 in Spider-Man Spider's Shadow. None other than Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. Well, he isn't really intending to get his hands on it, it's more like it gets its tendrils on him after blaming Reed for causing Peter to leave it. The black symbiote suit then forcefully bonds to Reed and takes control of his brilliant mind, using it to extract its own offspring. So it's likely only going to get a lot more dark in this series before it gets any brighter. If it gets any brighter. I guess we'll see what Chip Zdarsky has in store for us. Number 1, Carnage. While we might know Aunt May's alternate spider totem persona as a hero, the one who hails from the reality of Earth 3123, Spider-Man, she also has her own dark spider alternate. We meet this version of May Riley who goes by the mantle Carnage in Spider-Verse issue number 2 out of 2019. Here Spider-Man finds herself attacked by her dark alternate, Carnage, who comes through a portal into Mam's reality, and hails herself from Earth 20143. This version of Aunt May is instead bonded with the Carnage symbiote and believes firmly in spreading chaos and death throughout the multiverse. It takes May working in tandem with all her good counterparts across the multiverse to fight back this villainous version of herself, an alternate spider person.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Spider's Man. We'll kick off this list on an itchy note. This version of Spider-Man from Earth 11580 is actually Spider's Man. You might be asking, wait a minute Taylor, spiders? Like more than one? Oh yeah, he's actually made up of thousands of spiders that work together as if they're one person, like a hive mind. See, before that incident, that horrible incident, Peter and Gwen were visiting Horizon Labs, and instead of one spider taking a bite out of Peter's finger and then blessing him with biceps and perfect vision, he instead fell into a pit of radioactive spiders where they all consumed him, and subsequently his consciousness was spread out through all of those spiders. Hive mind, so gross. How horrible is this already? If I just got robbed and Spider's Man came to save the day, I'd be sick. Just seeing a cover of this guy on Spider-Gwen issue 3 makes me so uncomfortable. I mean, hats off to Christos Gage and George Molina for making this character one of the most unique versions. You can definitely say that, definitely unique. The Spider. Coming from Earth 15, the Spider, also known as Inmate 24739, made his first appearance in Exiles issue 12. Inmate, what's going on with that? Is Peter bad in this reality? Yeah, he's actually pretty horrible. He's a redhead who has a lot in common with Cletus Cassidy, and in turn he gets slapped with 67 consecutive life sentences by a jury. He's not as into the saving lives thing, he's rather into the opposite. He joined Weapon X after being drafted by the Timebreakers. Now, as horrible as the Spider sounds, he still feels like Peter when you read this comic. He has a similar sense of humor as Deadpool here, so it's still fun, although he's evil. Hyperion of Earth 4023 also joined, became the leader, and the Spider stood by his side as they planned on conquering multiple realities. Pete met his fate in issue 44 of Exiles when Firestar hit him with a Mega Blast. He turned into ash. Already cremated, look at that, we get to save money. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help our nerd squad over here in our nerd base. You guys are the best. Thanks for sticking around. Let's keep going with this list. Number 8, Spider-Kid. Making his first appearance in Spider-Force issue 1, Earth 218 Peter's childhood is actually darker this time around, believe it or not. See, both of his parents passed away in a car crash, and Uncle Ben was a mean old man afterwards who was just horrible to Peter all the time. Peter actually changed his name to Charlie, and then he didn't try and be good. He actually became quite a troubled young man. He had to spend 2 years at the Administration for Child Services and then 2 more years at the Horizon Juvenile Detention Center. In order to get by, he chose to steal money from street dealers. He's not a bad kid, although I've just said that he is a few times. He just had a horrible childhood and he slipped down the wrong path. It happens. But that all changed when Charlie was recruited into the Superior Spider Army by Ashley Barton. She calls him Grandpa because he reminds her of an older Pete from her reality. He's like, yeah, I'm 13 though, please don't call me Gramps. Awesome. Coming to you live from Warp World, one of the most out there versions of Peter Parker hit the page in Infinity Wars issue 3. Moon Knight and Spider-Man are gearing up. They're making a game plan to take down Gamora. And Spider-Man says, look, just punch whoever I punch in a second. Deal? Easy peasy. That turns out to be a lot harder than imagined when the both of them merge together. Alongside Arachnite, we got to meet some other amalgams of characters. We got Ghost Panther, Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and more, so much more. Peter's mind was also separated into 4 different personalities, each desiring dominance. So we have Science Pete, the Night Pete, friendly neighborhood arachnid Pete, and for when it comes to signing checks and shaking hands, we have CEO Pete. Number 6. Astro Spider. Jumping on over to Earth 3145, making his first appearance in Spider-Force Issue 2, John Jameson III was an astronaut for NASA, and during one mission, a spider got trapped in his suit, which it's an absolute nightmare scenario right there. But when the space shuttle was hit by cosmic waves, John then obtained these amazing new abilities. He didn't come home and stop bank robbers one quip and whip at a time. See, this Earth was now destroyed by a thermonuclear war, so Jameson was assigned to oversee the construction of a spacecraft on the Nautilus platform. He, along with 35 others, are the last of humanity. After this cosmic mishap, John can now read minds. He can create webs of solid telekinetic energy, but he met his fate a few issues later when he was feasted on by Verna. Sometimes being a spider totem sucks.
Number 5. Venom. Not that Venom from Earth 616, this Venom from Earth X, aka Earth 9997. This version of Venom and alternate spider person is May Parker, the daughter of Mary Jane Watson Parker and Peter Parker. There is much we do not know about May's origins, but we do know that in her youth she was trained likely by the hero Daredevil, aka her uncle Matt, in the use of her spider sense in combat. Her relationship with her father was made more complicated when Venom left its aged host, Eddie Brock, and sought out May to try and use her as a weapon of revenge against Peter Parker, still holding a grudge against Spider-Man for rejecting the symbiote years ago. Venom was like, I remember all these grudges, I don't let them go. Fortunately, May's willpower was so strong that she was able to bend the symbiote to her will, allowing her to take control of it and use it for her own heroic means, instead of it corrupting her. Number 4. Madam Web. Julia Carpenter has been known by a few different spider-centric names over the years when it comes to her heroics. Initially we knew her as Spider-Woman, but she would later take up the mantle of Arachne before becoming Madam Web, and receiving the precognitive and telepathic abilities of Cassandra Webb as she passed away. Julia Carpenter originally got her spider-like abilities when she was unknowingly experimented on. She had volunteered to be part of what she thought was a medical athletic-based study. However, in reality, the government was really experimenting on her to try and create their own superhero. Julia Carpenter also has a daughter named Rachel, though we haven't really seen her for a while in the comics. I hope she's doing okay. Number 3. Spider-Woman. Thank goodness not everyone on this list is known as Spider-Woman, because that would make it really confusing. Though this hero is someone that you would probably still associate with the name Spider-Girl, as it was a mantle she had for many years in the comics. However, May Parker, the daughter of Mary Jane Watson Parker and Peter Parker from Earth 982, is all grown up now, hence her taking on the mantle of Spider-Woman instead. May, nicknamed Mayday Parker, is the first child of MJ and Peter, but also has a clone, named April Parker, who joined the family as a stand-in cousin, and May also has a younger brother known as Ben. I always wondered if Peter just comes up with all the names for their kids, or what's going on there. I have to assume though that MJ must just really be on board with naming her kids after Peter's aunt and uncle, as in almost all alternate realities, that's what ends up happening. I don't even know, does MJ just not want to name people after her family? I guess her family history is pretty weird and dramatic, so maybe that's why. She has mixed feelings about her family members. Number 2. Ghost Spider. While Gwen Stacy might be dead and gone in the reality of Earth 616, on the reality of Earth 65, she was the one who received spider-like abilities, while her good friend Peter Parker was the one to die, becoming the reluctant villain known as the Lizard before being killed. Peter had looked up to Spider-Woman, as she was originally known when she first came on the scene. He wanted to be a hero like her, but instead ended up as a monstrous creature, oh no, becoming the Lizard after experimenting on himself. Gwen of Earth 65 has been known as Spider-Woman, Venom, Spider-Gwen, and more recently took up the mantle of Ghost Spider in the comics. Number 1. Spider-Woman. One of my all-time favorite spider heroes. And also yes, the second Spider-Woman on this list, but hey, a lot of people go under the mantle Spider-Woman, as I said. Jessica Drew has a super weird and kind of complicated story when it comes to her origins, especially as time has gone on and we've learned more about it. But I don't know if we consider it weirder than her original origins, which was that she was a woman who used to be a spider. That's a pretty weird story. I am gonna say it's almost at that level though, with there being secret plots seemingly behind all of what went on with her birth and her childhood, and her being experimented on as a child. However, when her origins was shifted initially to her being a sick child who was saved with a serum based off of spider DNA, it was a lot less twisty and bizarre. It's actually almost kinda nice. Ugh, I don't know though, it's pretty weird, still pretty weird. All of her origins are weird. Especially as she did still spend pretty much all of her childhood inside a stasis tube, in essence skipping all of those developmental stages and then emerging as a fully grown, naive, and superpowered adult later on in her life. Fully cured, but now having spider-like powers. Basically like a child who just fast forwarded to an adult, but then you didn't actually get to experience a childhood, so what would that be like? I feel like you'd be kinda messed up from that. Jessica has been a member of the Avengers, a pal of Wolverine's, and has fought alongside her fellow spider alternates from the Spider-Verse. All around, she's just a cool lady. And now it is time for an honorable mention! Someone who wasn't on this list but in a weird way is also a female Spider-Man alternate is everyone's favorite actress, redhead, and Spider-Man confidant, Mary Jane Watson. Mary Jane is not a permanent spider hero in the reality of Earth 616, but she has fought by Peter's side before in his Iron Spider suit, and on the Earth of 18119 as the spider-themed hero Spinnerette. There she fights alongside her family full-time pretty much, including her husband Peter Parker aka Spider-Man and their daughter Annie Parker aka Spider-Ling.